Chapter 28:06. Qin Wuyu was relieved. He was also amazed by Lin Sun's sword, but more importantly, Lin Sun won the duel so beautifully. An eye for an eye. It's a pity that Shun Zidao was used as a spear. Now even his state of mind has problems. If he can't repair his state of mind, I'm afraid there's no hope for him to achieve immortality in this life. He sighed in his heart. Shun Zidao wasn't so hateful. What was hateful were those behind the scenes. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Yu Wucho in the distance. This old guy had always been averse to trouble and had a neutral attitude. How could he let Shun Zidao get involved this time? In the distance, Yu Wucho's face was very gloomy. He didn't know whether it was because of Shun Zidao's defeat or something else. Zhuang Shirlu, I need an explanation from you this time. Yu Wucho looked at Zhuang Shirlu coldly. Zhuang Shirlu's face was cloudy and he said, I didn't expect such a thing to happen. Yu Wucho snorted and ignored him. He left with Shun Zidao and disappeared from the Sky Evolution Dojo. The expressions of many great figures present became subtle when they noticed this scene. Qin Wuyu vaguely realized that Yu Wucho, the head of the first peak, seemed to be kept in the dark about Shun Zidao's participation in this duel. This made him feel awestruck. Those who dared to do this were bound to have a background and identity that didn't fear Yu Wucho. But who on earth led all this? Zhuang Shirlu? It was impossible. His identity was not high enough. Qin Wuyu was lost in thought. Junior brother Lin won. At this time, Qin Ruoling, Yi Chunjun and other descendants of the ninth peak were very excited, their eyes shining. Looking at the descendants of other peaks, they were all shocked and doubtful like a flock of frightened birds. On the assessment platform, Zhuang Shirlu's face was very gloomy. Yu Wucho's angry words before he left made him realize that if he couldn't give a satisfactory answer, he would completely offend the head of the first peak. It's all because of this little bastard. Zhuang Shirlu looked at Lin Sun and gritted his teeth secretly. At this time, Lin also looked at Zhuang Shirlu and said, Deacon Zhuang, let's start the second duel. Don't waste everyone's time. Her casual words were like an invisible provocation. Zhuang Shirlu took a deep breath, and his heart couldn't help but shake when he thought of the second monstrous genius that was about to enter the arena. The second match, the second peak's core disciple, Feng Qixi, shall take the stage. Zhuang Shirlu said in a deep voice. Feng Qixi. The surroundings were stirred, and many revealed surprised expressions. Didn't they say that she has been chosen by the Origin Pavilion and will become its heir? That's a matter for next month. Before that, she's still a core disciple of the second peak. She's qualified to participate in such a battle. I didn't expect that even she would get involved. Discussions broke out everywhere. Many of the core inheritors of the nine peaks could not remain calm. Feng Qixi, a peerless monster who had suppressed his cultivation for more than 1,000 years, a core disciple who was ranked second in the last nine peaks summit. As soon as Zhuang Shirlu finished speaking, a woman with an extremely slender figure appeared in the Heavenflow Square. She wore a black-colored warrior's attire while her jet-black hair was tied into a ponytail, and it revealed her snow-white and long neck. Her oval-shaped face was clear and beautiful, and her eyes were bright like stars. Especially her pair of legs, they were slender and straight as she stood there casually, causing her to seem valiant and heroic, and she emanated an arrogant aura that caused even men to feel inferior to her. The surroundings were even more stirred when they saw that it really was her. Feng Qixi's reputation, resources, and cultivation surpassed Li Zhongyuan and Shun Zidao. Numerous rumors said that Feng Qixi had absolute confidence in stepping foot into the eternal path towards the Tao a few hundred years ago, yet she'd restrained herself. The reason was that she was dissatisfied with that path of breakthrough. She would rather wait and suppress her own cultivation than break through the realm just like that. This obviously showed how great Feng Qixi's spirit and will were. Why is she getting involved as well? Qin Wuyu's expression was gloomy. If Chun Zidao was said to be an accident, then Feng Qishi's appearance was even more unexpected. Because everyone in the Origin sect's ancestral court was clearly aware that Feng Qishi was infatuated with the Tao, and she'd never participated in any dispute. Yet now, Feng Qishi just had to come. Qin Wuyu gazed at Zhuang Shilu, and the latter's eyes faintly revealed a trace of complacency. Obviously, all of this was within his grasp. Chen Zidao is ranked in the top 5 amongst the core disciples of the Nine Peaks, whereas Feng Qishi was ranked second in the Tao discussion of the Nine Peaks. Such an arrangement is clearly done intentionally to target junior brother Lin Sun, and they don't intend to give him any chance to become a core disciple. The expressions of Qin Ruoling and the others were slightly unsightly. Even the stupidest person would probably be able to discern some clues from such an arrangement. In the past, those who participated in the core disciple test like Lin Sun had never been targeted like this. Just think about it, the top 5 core disciples of the Nine Peaks had been dispatched merely for the sake of targeting a new disciple, so wasn't this bullying? It wasn't fair. At this moment, even the core disciples and core disciples of the Nine Peaks realized that something was wrong with this test, and it was done intentionally to target Lin Sun. Indeed, this didn't seem to go against the rules of the Origin sect, but such a scene couldn't help but arouse resentment in their hearts. They could target Lin Sun this time. Would they also target someone else next time? A promotion test had become an opportunity for the Yuanqing Pavilion to suppress Lin Sun. How could they not be disappointed? It was true that many people in the ancestral court of the Origin sect hated Lin Sun, but there were also many people in the ancestral court who had no enmity with Lin Sun. When they saw Lin Sun being suppressed in such an unfair manner, they naturally felt very unhappy. At this moment, although no one spoke up for Lin Sun, the big shots present were keenly aware of the change in the atmosphere. Such an arrangement of the test had obviously aroused public anger. This was a big deal. Once these successors felt that it was unfair and cried out for Lin Sun's unfair treatment, the reputation accumulated by the Yuanqing Pavilion in the past was bound to be impacted. And Zhuang Shilu, as the chief examiner of this test, would probably become the sacrifice to appease people's anger. Thinking of this, many big shots looked at Zhuang Shilu with pity in their eyes. Zhuang Shilu was not stupid. How could he not notice the change in the situation? His heart also sank, but he was not worried. As long as he could prevent Lin Sun from becoming a core disciple in this test, even if he was punished, he believed that someone would come forward to help him. The battle has already begun. Why haven't you made a move? Zhuang Shilu shouted. After Feng Qishi entered the dojo, she did not make a move immediately. Instead, she stood there and looked at Lin Sun, not attacking. At this moment, everyone noticed Feng Qishi's abnormality, and they couldn't help but feel strange. What was going on? Lin Sun was slightly puzzled. In his opinion, Feng Qishi could be considered a formidable opponent. Her aura was extraordinarily powerful, and even he felt a trace of pressure. However, she did not seem to have any intention of making a move. At this moment, Zhuang Shirlyo's urging finally caused Feng Qishi to react. She turned around and walked out of the dojo without any hesitation. I admit defeat in this battle. Her light words caused everyone present to be stunned. She admitted defeat before even making a move? This was not like Feng Qishi's style of doing things. Even Lin Sun was greatly surprised. But Feng Qishi seemed as if nothing had happened. Her beautiful face was calm, and her extremely tall and slender figure had already walked out of the dojo. Zhuang Shirlyo's face turned green, and he berated in a stern voice, "Nonsense. This is a test," yet she admitted defeat before even making a move. Are you even abiding by the rules of the test? He was flustered in his heart. If Feng Qishi didn't make a move, then the second battle would be equivalent to Lin Sun winning again, and it was very likely that an unexpected variable would occur. The rules of the test don't stipulate that one can't admit defeat. Feng Qishi stood outside the dojo and faced the countless surprised and bewildered gazes in the surroundings as she said indifferently, "Not to mention that I've already confirmed that I'm not a match for junior brother Lin Sun. Since it's like that, then why do this?" The surroundings were in an uproar. Many people were unable to figure out Feng Qishi's thoughts, and they felt that it was too unusual. "You've already confirmed that you're not a match for him without even fighting him? Feng Qishi, you obtained second in the Tao discussion of the 9 peaks last time, and you're about to enter the Sky Pavilion to cultivate. Isn't speaking such a childish reason a bit too laughable?" Zhuang Shirlu spoke coldly. Feng Qishi's decision had completely thrown him into disorder. As a result, he vented all of his anger on Feng Qishi. However, Feng Qishi frowned and said coldly, "Since you've said that, then I might as well speak frankly. I'm participating in the test this time because the peak master of the second peak, Yun Tianming, personally came forward. As the successor of the second peak, I naturally can't refuse directly." The surroundings were in an uproar, and great waves were set off in the surroundings. Many gazes looked towards the peak master of the second peak, Yun Tianming. The latter was obviously caught off guard, and a gloomy expression appeared on his face as he said, "Feng Qishi, I only suggested that you participate in the test, but I never forced you to participate. Don't let everyone misunderstand." Feng Qishi said calmly, "In any case, I've already said it out loud, so there's no harm in me saying a bit more. A small figure like me can't interfere in the open and veiled strife between the great figures of our Yuan sect, and I can't resist when the matter falls on me. But justice is in the hearts of the people." She paused for a moment and continued. "Everyone has witnessed junior brother Lin's accomplishments in battle, and everyone has seen his strength. A figure like him has the qualifications to become a core disciple even if he's just joined the sect. Yet now, there's someone who doesn't want him to pass the test, and they're using such tricks to stop him. Isn't this too disappointing?" Her voice resounded through the surroundings, and the disciples of the 9 peaks couldn't help but nod repeatedly in agreement. What Lin Sun encountered caused them to feel disgruntled as well, and they were extremely disappointed indeed. The expressions of Yun Tianming and Zhuang Shirlu grew even more unsightly. They'd never imagined that Feng Qishi would betray them at a time like this, and it was too late for them to stop her. After all, countless great figures were gathered around the Heaven Flow dojo, and there were even some old fellows watching all of this from the shadows. How could they dare to stop Feng Qishi at a time like this? When he saw that Feng Qishi intended to say something, Zhuang Shirlu couldn't help but berate in a stern voice. "How presumptuous! This is a test, not a place for you to vent the resentment in your heart. If you continue disturbing the progress of the test, then don't blame me for suppressing you and handing you over to the Origin Pavilion to be dealt with. P.S. The second update is here. I wrote it in a weak and feverish state. Whether it looks good or not, I'm sure everyone can understand." Chapter 2807. A stern voice resounded, and Zhuang Shirlu's expression was icy cold. Everyone could tell that he was exasperated. Feng Qishi said, "You want to hand me over to the Sky Pavilion? Sure, I'll become an heir of the Sky Pavilion next month anyway, so I can familiarize myself with the environment there." She wore a black warrior's uniform, her hair tied into a ponytail, and her legs were slender and straight. She was valiant and elegant, and many men seemed inferior to her. At this moment, she didn't show any fear even when facing Zhuang Shirlu. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling surprised. Right at this moment, Feng Qishi, who had already left, turned around and looked at Lin Sun with eyes that were as bright as stars. She said, "Junior brother, perhaps many people in our sect see you as a thorn in their side, but even more will stand on the side of rules and fairness." With that, she swaggered off. From beginning to end, she didn't spare a glance at the livid Zhuang Shirlu. The atmosphere was silent and it was very subtle. No one had expected Feng Qishi to do this. Did she admit that her combat strength was inferior to Lin Sun's? No. It was because she didn't want to be used. For this reason, she would rather shed all pretense of cordiality with Zhuang Shirlu in public, and she didn't hesitate to make everything clear. This would definitely offend some people. But it was obvious that Feng Qixi had thrown caution to the wind and didn't care. As expected of senior sister Feng Qixi. Senior sister Feng Qixi, well done. We descendants of the Yuan sect should have such backbone and courage. We don't go against our hearts and cry out for injustice. A wave of cheers resounded in the arena. Many descendants of the Nine Peaks were excited as they cheered for Feng Qixi. These voices were like slaps that fiercely slapped on Zhuang Shirlu's face, and it burned unbearably. Silence! He shouted in a deep voice, suppressing the voices of the audience, and said with a gloomy expression, Feng Qixi's admission of defeat is very strange and abnormal. I will ask the elders of the Sky Pavilion to personally investigate this matter. If they find that Feng Qixi intentionally broke the rules of the exam, they will definitely not forgive her. Everyone was stunned. Zhuang Shirlu's words made them suspect that he intended to take revenge on Feng Qixi. For a time, many descendants were furious. Compared to Lin Sun, Feng Qixi was an old member of the core disciples of the Yuan school, and he had always had great prestige and influence. If he was retaliated because of this matter, who wouldn't be furious? Zhuang Shirlu did not pay attention to this and said expressionlessly, the sect will naturally give a fair explanation for Feng Qixi's matter. Now, let the third round of assessment begin. Just as he was about to announce the name of his third opponent, a cold and deep voice rang out. I give up on the third match. Whoosh! Everyone's gazes looked towards the owner of the voice. It was a man with an emaciated figure, bronze skin, and a face that seemed as if it was carved by a blade. His aura was obscure and inconspicuous, but when anyone looked at this person, they would feel a piercing pain, and it seemed as if they weren't looking at a person but a volcano that would erupt at any moment, and it was filled with a violent and ferocious aura. The successor of the third peak, Flowing Cloud Feng. In terms of background, perhaps he was inferior to Feng Qixi, and in terms of background, he was inferior to Shunzaidao, but in terms of viciousness, he was far more ruthless than the two. His ruthlessness was reflected in battle. No matter who he was fighting, he was extremely ferocious and completely disregarded his life. He was simply like a madman. Life and death were like fleeting clouds to him. In the past few years, Drifting Cloud Feng had relied on his innate ruthlessness to make an extremely great reputation amongst the Nine Peaks. Under normal circumstances, there were very few people that were willing to spar with him because he was too ruthless. Even if it was a spar between fellow disciples of the same sect, he would completely display a ferocious attitude of disregarding his life. In the eyes of others, Drifting Cloud Feng was absolutely a peerless villain, a ruthless figure that disregarded life and death for the sake of battle. At this moment, when they saw Drifting Cloud Feng was arranged to fight in the third round of the assessment, the expressions of countless people turned grim. Even the peak master of the ninth peak, Qin Wuyu, felt apprehensive in his heart, and he was furious. His intentions of sending out such a figure that disregarded his life in battle was obvious, and it was to not allow Lin Sun to pass the assessment no matter what. There was Shunzaidao and Feng Qixi before him, and Drifting Cloud Feng at the back. It could be said that the opponents arranged for these three battles were sufficient to stop any elite disciple of the Nine Peaks. Even most of the core disciples of the Nine Peaks would probably be unable to pass through them. But now, all these were arranged to deal with a newcomer like Lin Sun, which was an announcement to everyone that Yuanqing Pavilion didn't intend to give Lin Sun a chance to pass the assessment at all. How could Qin Wuyu not be angry? At this moment there was also a burst of discussion in the field, full of disbelief and indignation. Drifting Cloud Feng. It was not until now that they realized that the opponents arranged for the three battles against Lin Sun were obviously well prepared and harbored evil intentions. However, people's anger was not ignited. because Drifting Cloud Feng gave up the duel directly before he showed up. This unexpected scene surprised people, and they couldn't help but think of Feng Qixi, who had taken the initiative to admit defeat before. Zhuang Shirlu was obviously caught off guard by this scene. His face suddenly became extremely ugly, and he could no longer control his inner anger. He said in a stern voice, "How dare you? Who allowed you to give up?" He glared at Drifting Cloud Feng, exuding a terrible momentum. Drifting Cloud Feng looked indifferent and said, "Feng Qixi can take the initiative to admit defeat, why can't I? If I had known that your Yuanqing Pavilion would make such an arrangement, I would never have agreed to participate." "Are you slandering the practice of Yuanqing Pavilion?" Zhuang Shirlu said coldly. Drifting Cloud Feng said, "I don't want to say some inappropriate words in front of so many people, so please don't force me, Deacon Zhuang. Otherwise, I'm afraid today's matter will become more and more serious." After saying that, he turned around and left. He didn't look at Zhuang Shirlu, who was trembling with anger. Near the Heavenly Evolution Dojo, those big shots had different expressions and seemed to be lost in thought. Inappropriate words? Obviously, there was probably a mystery behind Drifting Cloud Feng's appearance in this assessment. At this time, the field was in an uproar. Many people on the 9 Peaks couldn't restrain their anger. "There's a conspiracy behind this. Yuanqing Pavilion must give an explanation. Although junior brother Lin is a newcomer who has just joined the sect, how can he be treated so unfairly?" This time he was suppressed. Who will be suppressed next time? How can the rules of our sect be trampled like this? Angry voices sounded and pointed at Zhuang Shirlu. The scene was faintly out of control. This was originally an assessment aimed at Lin Sun. But now unexpected changes had occurred one after another. First, Feng Qixi admitted defeat and left, and then Drifting Cloud Feng directly gave up. All of this seemed to prove that there was something wrong with this assessment. Lin Sun, who stood alone in the dojo, didn't expect the situation to turn out like this. It was completely beyond his expectations. At this time, when he looked at Zhuang Shirlu, who had aroused public anger and was condemned by thousands of people, Lin Sun couldn't help but sneer. "Zhuang Shirlu, the 9th Peak needs an explanation from you." Suddenly, Qin Wuyu also spoke and questioned Zhuang Shirlu in the name of the 9th Peak. This caused the scene to become even more chaotic and sensational. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect that Qin Wuyu, who had been quite resistant to him from the beginning, would stand up for him, a true disciple at this time. Lin Sun couldn't help but think of what Qin Wuyu had said on the first day he joined the 9th Peak. "As long as you don't violate the rules and regulations of the sect, no matter what happens, I will stand up for you." At this moment, looking at Qin Wuyu in the distance, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel touched in his heart. He finally had a sense of belonging to the 9th Peak. Zhuang Shilu's expression changed indeterminately. He had experienced great storms and waves in his life, and he himself was an immortal existence in the Nirvana realm. Although he was only a deacon of the Yuanqing Pavilion, his authority was no less than that of the Peak Masters of the 9 Peaks. But now, he felt that it was extremely troublesome and even a little overwhelmed. In the 3 battles, Shun Zidao lost too quickly, and Feng Qixi took the initiative to admit defeat, and Drifting Cloud Feng took the initiative to give up, which was even more unexpected. At this moment, facing the angry accusations of countless successors of the 9 Peaks and facing Qin Wuyu's questioning, Zhuang Shirlu strongly realized that if this matter couldn't be handled properly, the examiner would be the first to suffer. Taking a few deep breaths, Zhuang Shirlu tried to calm himself down and said, "Everyone, there were indeed a lot of problems in today's assessment, but I believe that the sect will give you a satisfactory answer. Now that the assessment is over, you can leave." Obviously, he planned to stall for time in exchange for more opportunities to change the situation. But such an answer obviously couldn't satisfy those present. "Humph. If you, Zhuang Shirlu, Don't give the ninth peak a satisfactory answer today, I won't leave. Qin Wuyu snorted coldly, appearing very firm and unyielding. That's right, none of us from the ninth peak will leave. Qin Ruoling and the other successors of the ninth peak all spoke up. Only Jing Qian looked like he was unlucky. His expression was wooden, and he didn't say a word. But it was obvious that no one cared about what he was thinking. This matter doesn't just concern the ninth peak, it also concerns the assessment of every successor disciple of the 9 peaks in the future. How can we just let it go like this? The 7th peak master, Tian Wu Kuo, also spoke up. Zhuang Shirlu, what we want to know now is, did you arrange this assessment yourself, or did the Origin Qin Pavilion arrange it? The 8th peak master, Sangzhong Shui, also spoke up. In my opinion, it's better to ask the Origin Qin Pavilion to intervene and investigate this matter. If a newcomer who just joined the sect is being suppressed like this, how will the Yuan sect's face be left? The 5th peak master, Yu Xiang Ting, and the 6th peak master, Wen Dongmian, also spoke up one after another. In an instant, all the important figures made things difficult for Zhuang Shirlu, pushing him into the limelight. This made Zhuang Shirlu's heart turn cold, and he realized that the situation was not good. He didn't expect the situation to become more and more intense, to the point where it was out of control. He couldn't help but look into the distance. The 2nd peak master, Yun Tianming, was expressionless, the 3rd peak master, Nan Bohong, was silent, and the 4th peak master, Mu Yunjing, simply turned his head away. These 3 were obviously planning to stand by and watch. As for the 1st peak master, Yu Wuchou, he had already left with Shin Zidao. Before he left, he had said that he wanted Zhuang Shirlu to give a satisfactory answer. At this moment, Zhuang Shirlu was in a terrible mood. Chapter 2808. The crowd was furious and the situation was turbulent. Zhuang Shirlu felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Looking at this scene from a distance, Lin Sun already knew that Zhuang Shirlu was doomed this time. Sure enough, at this moment, a majestic voice sounded, "Deacon Zhuang Shirlu, do you know your crime?" This sentence resounded in the vicinity of the Tianyin dojo like a great bell. Then the figure of Fang Daoping, the deputy head of the Tianyin dojo, appeared out of thin air. This indifferent and aloof deputy head of the Tianyin dojo was now extremely powerful and frightening. There was a sudden silence in the field. Fang Daoping's words meant that Zhuang Shirlu was guilty. Zhuang Shirlu's face changed greatly. When he was about to explain something, a low and indifferent voice sounded, "If you continue to quibble, you will only suffer heavier punishment. I advise you not to take chances and admit your mistake quickly. I believe that the sect will give you an explanation." With the voice, a skinny old man appeared. It was Tang Qiu, the deputy head of Yuan Qing Pavilion. Hearing Tang Qiu's words, Zhuang Shirlu's face turned ashen, and he said dejectedly, "This time, I was indeed resentful and deliberately embarrassed Lin Sun in the assessment." Seeing that Zhuang Shirlu confessed, the anger in the hearts of the people in the field subsided a lot and became calm. But some big shots frowned and their eyes flickered. Everyone could see that Zhuang Shirlu confessed because of Tang Qiu, not Fang Daoping. Moreover, Zhuang Shirlu originally intended to defend himself, but with the appearance of Tang Qiu, the change was a little subtle. Tang Qiu nodded slightly. "If you are wrong, you should be punished. Otherwise, how can you convince the public? But considering that you have made a lot of efforts for Yuan Qin Pavilion in the past years, even if there is no merit, you have worked hard. Do you accept it?" Zhuang Shirlu nodded without thinking. "Yes." "Only 5 years of monthly salary?" Fang Daoping frowned and said, "Deputy Pavilion Head Tang, what happened today is so bad. As a deacon, Zhuang Shirlu wantonly suppressed the inherited disciples in the name of the assessment. Now he has caused great indignation and resentment, but only this punishment is given to him. How can we convince the public?" Deputy Pavilion Leader Fang is right. What Zhuang Shirlu did today is a serious violation of the assessment rules. He must be severely punished. Lin Sun spoke in a clear voice within the Heaven Flow dojo. Otherwise, I'll be extremely unconvinced in my heart. Yes, he must be severely punished. Zhuang Shirlu is a deacon, yet his methods are so despicable. We can't let him off just like that. A wave of cries resounded in the surroundings. Zhuang Shirlu's expression was gloomy and he wished he could gag those people's mouth. As a deacon, this was the first time he had experienced the feeling of being judged. It was very humiliating and very panicky. He looked at Tang Qiu. Among those present, only Tang Qiu could help him. Tang Qiu pondered and said, "Well, let's announce the punishment of Zhuang Shirlu to the whole sect 3 days later." Although there were some twists and turns in today's assessment, it's a smooth ending. In my opinion, it's better to confer the title of core disciple to Lin Sun first. Fang Daoping said unhappily, "Why do we have to wait for 3 days?" Who couldn't see that he was stalling for time? Tang Qiu said solemnly, "I think the 3 pavilions need to discuss this matter together and let us deputy pavilion masters make a decision together. After all, although it's a small matter, it has a great impact. We must be cautious." Deputy Pavilion Master Tang is right. In the distance, Yun Tianming, the master of the second peak, said in a deep voice, "It's inappropriate to convict Zhuang Shirlu in a hurry. It's better to deal with him after discussion." Yes, I believe the sect will give everyone a satisfactory answer after discussion. Nan Bohong, the master of the third peak, and Miunjing, the master of the fourth peak, also spoke in support of Tang Qiu's decision. Many descendants were shocked and bewildered. The situation in front of them was unpredictable, which made them realize that it was very likely to be a contest between those big shots, and it was not something they could get involved in at all. Lin Sun couldn't help frowning and firmly remembered Tang Qiu, the deputy pavilion master of Yuanqing Pavilion. There was no doubt that this old guy was definitely one of his enemies. "Qin Wuyu, what do you think?" Tang Qiu looked at Qin Wuyu, the master of the ninth peak in the distance. Qin Wuyu was silent for a moment and said, "I only hope that the sect can give a fair answer to Lin Sun, the inherited disciple of the ninth peak. Otherwise, I will never let it go." Tang Qiu frowned imperceptibly and immediately nodded. "This is exactly what I want to see. Deputy Pavilion Master Fang, what do you think?" Fang Daoping said indifferently, "If so, it doesn't matter. However, I must ask how Zhuang Shirlu arranged the 3 duels. Even Feng Qishi, the successor of the second peak, and Drifting Cloud Peak, the third peak, felt it was unfair and chose to give up. Who instigated them to participate in the duels in the first place? I don't believe that Zhuang Shirlu is so capable." His words made many people's expressions change, such as Yun Tianming, Nan Bohong, Miunjing, and other peak masters. Even Tang Qiu's eyelids twitched. He realized that Fang Daoping was going to make a big deal out of this. If that was the case, there would probably be a huge upheaval in the entire Yuan sect. Lin Sun had seen that the force represented by Tang Qiu wanted to defend Zhuang Shirlu, but obviously, Fang Daoping wouldn't agree. "You two, there's no need to argue anymore." Suddenly, a figure as fat as a small hill appeared. His huge figure gave people a great sense of oppression. It was Yu Xing, one of the 3 deputy pavilion masters of Yuanqing Pavilion. His appearance caused Fang Daoping and Tang Qiu to be stunned. Yu Xing looked solemn and said, "Pavilion Master has issued an oral order to abolish Zhuang Shirlu's deacon position and imprison him in the penitentiary for 100 years. His words shocked the whole audience. Yu Beihai, the head of Yuanqing Pavilion, had been in closed-door training for many years. But at this time, he issued an oral order to show his attitude of severely punishing Zhuang Shirlu. Abolishing the deacon position was equivalent to depriving Zhuang Shirlu of all his power in the sect. And being imprisoned in the penitentiary for 100 years meant that Zhuang Shirlu would never be able to get up again in these 100 years. Hearing such a punishment, Zhuang Shirlu seemed to be struck by lightning. His face turned pale and he was lost. Tang Qiu's expression was extremely gloomy. He didn't care about Zhuang Shirlu's punishment. What he was worried about was that once Zhuang Shirlu was imprisoned, he might say something he shouldn't say. Thinking of this, Tang Qiu said, "Watch your mouth. I'll use all my power to help you. If you dare say something you shouldn't say, you won't be the only one who will suffer misfortune. The Zhuang clan behind you will probably suffer misfortune as well." Zhuang Shirlu trembled all over and nodded with difficulty. On this day, what happened in Yuan Qing Pavilion's Tianyu Dojo spread in the primordial realm at the fastest speed and caused a stir in Yuan sect. Deacon Zhuang Shirlu was deposed and imprisoned in the penitentiary. Lin Sun, a newcomer who had just joined the sect for less than 10 days, had advanced to become a core disciple under the gaze of countless people. This time, Lin Sun has broken the record for the fastest time for a true disciple to become a core disciple. However, this can be considered to be well-deserved. His combat strength is really too strong. Many sighs of emotion sounded out. The battle in Tianyu Dojo was seen by many people. Even Shun Zidao wasn't a match for a single sword strike from Lin Sun. It could be said to be heaven-defying. Dong Wang Shaoan, Qi Qingshi, Mu Zunwu, and the others who had joined Yuan sect with Lin Sun had mixed feelings in their hearts. They could only watch helplessly as Lin Sun had left them far behind and become a core disciple. The most unlucky one is senior brother Shin Zidao. A crack has appeared in his mental state, and he's following in Li Zhongyuan's footstep. It's impossible for him to step into the immortal realm in the future. It's lamentable. There were also many people who felt sorry for Shin Zidao. The most admirable one is senior sister Feng Qishi. It's difficult for one not to admire her graceful bearing. Senior brother Lu Yunfeng is also very decisive. He's not afraid of despicable people like Zhuang Shirlu who tramples on the rules. There are many turbulent undercurrents hidden behind this battle. In the past, Zhuang Shirlu held great power and possessed the cultivation of the immortal realm. How monstrous was his power! But now, he's been reduced to a prisoner and stripped of all his power. How miserable is his situation! At the bottom of it all, the battle between these great figures is too dangerous, and it's not something we can get involved in. All sorts of discussions resounded in the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks of Yuan sect. When they talked about what happened in the Heaven Flow Dojo today, all of them felt horrified. Speaking of which, junior brother Lin Sun is really capable. Before he joined, he heavily injured Li Zhongyuan, and after he joined, he punished Chao Zonglin. Now, even Zhuang Shirlu has been dragged down by him. His destructive power isn't something an ordinary person can compare to. We must not provoke him without permission in the future. No, it's best to stay away from him so as to avoid bringing trouble upon ourselves. When Lin Sun was mentioned, everyone had complicated feelings. A newcomer had successively done so many sensational things since he joined the sect, and it had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. Sky Pavilion, Wild Cloud Residence. What do you think of this matter? A screen of light slowly dissipated, and what was reflected on it was exactly what had happened in the Heaven Flow Dojo. Xian Juyin, who'd seen all of this, said angrily, "Even an idiot can tell that Tang Qiu is protecting Zhuang Shirlu, and he might be the culprit behind the scenes. Why didn't he be punished? And that old dog Zhuang should be hacked into pieces. Merely punishing him like this is simply letting him off too lightly." Slap. The back of Xian Juyin's head suffered a slap, and it caused him to grimace in pain. "This is your opinion?" Xian Feiling's voice was filled with anger. Could it be that I have another opinion? Lin Sun is my brother, so I naturally stand on his side," Xian Juyin spoke boldly. Xian Feiling was obviously angered to the point of laughing, and he said, "For the sake of brotherhood, you can disregard the rules of the sect? I'm not the successor of Yuan sect, so why should I care about the rules?" Xian Juyin retorted. Xian Feiling fell silent and felt a slight headache, and he said after a while, "In the current Yuan sect, some people must obey the rules, some can make use of the rules, and some can override the rules." After a pause, he said in a low voice, "You can disregard the rules, but you must have the strength to override the rules. Otherwise, you'll be harmed if you trample on and violate the rules at will." For example, Zhuang Shirlu thinks he can use the rules to bully Lin Sun, but in the end, he's just a victim. For example, Tang Qiu thinks he can override the rules, but when Yu Beihai speaks, he can only bow his head and obey. Speaking of this, Xian Feiling asked, "Xiaojiu, do you think Yu Beihai is already above the rules? P.S. Thank you for your understanding and encouragement. Goldfish's fever has subsided, and her body is a little weak, but it won't affect the update." "Well, I'll update tonight." Chapter 2809. Xian Juyin fell into thought and said after a while, "Great Ancestor, do you think that Yuan Qing Pavilion can't override the rules of Yuan Church with his identity?" Xian Feiling said angrily, "I'm asking you." Xian Juyin said helplessly, "How do I know what you big shots think? It's hard to guess. I only know that Yuan Qing Pavilion settled this matter with one word, and no one dared to disobey him." Xian Feiling let out a long sigh. "It's been hard on you, but I guess it's fine for me to tell you. Yu Beihai did this because he didn't want to make a big deal out of this matter. Otherwise, he could have caught hold of Zhuang Shirlu and forced him to spit out some of the truth. In this way, not to mention others, Tang Qiu would definitely be implicated, and he would have to pay a price." Xian Juyin was surprised. He didn't want to make a big deal out of it. How many people would be implicated if it was really a big deal? Xian Feiling said, "It's useless to talk about this now. If it were me, I would do the same as Yu Beihai." After a pause, Xian Feiling said, "At least for now, Yuan Church can't be in chaos. Otherwise, the situation will be difficult to deal with." His voice gradually became low. "So, Lin Sun will encounter similar things in the future?" Xian Juyin's face darkened. Xian Feiling sneered. "Since he entered the ancestral court of Yuan Church, has he ever encountered any real danger? As long as he acts according to the rules, there are many people who support him behind him." Xian Juyin seemed to understand and said thoughtfully, "That's true. I solved the matter of Chao Zonglin with your power. This time, Fang Daoping intervened in the matter of Yuan Qing Pavilion. In the end, Yu Beihai also gave an order to settle the matter. From beginning to end, although Lin Sun was in the teeth of the storm, he was unscathed." Xian Feiling was silent for a moment and said, "Lin Sun is a good knife. If used well, he can eliminate the chronic diseases and tumors in Yuan Church. If not, he will hurt himself." After a pause he continued, "Wait and see. When he sets foot in the immortal realm, he will change from a chess piece to a player who can compete with those old guys." Xian Juyin was shocked. Only then did he realize that his great ancestor thought so of Lin Sun. The ninth peak. "Congratulations, junior brother Lin Sun. You've successfully become the core successor of the ninth peak." As soon as he returned, Yi Chunjun, Qin Ruoling, and other descendants congratulated Lin Sun with joy on their faces. Lin Sun's performance today had stunned everyone, and it had also allowed them, the successors of the ninth peak, to hold their heads high in front of the other peaks. It had been a long time since they had experienced this feeling. Lin Sun smiled and returned their greetings one by one. Then, he went straight to pay his respects to Peak Lord Qin Wu. Disciple Lin Sun thanks Peak Master. When he saw Qin Wu, Lin Sun solemnly saluted. Qin Wu said, "Today's matter was truly dangerous. Although it was resolved in the end, you still have to be careful in the future. Do not do anything that is out of bounds." His tone was still cold and hard, but Lin Sun knew that Qin Wu had already acknowledged him when he took him in as the successor of the ninth summit. This disciple will remember Peak Master's teachings. Lin Sun cupped his hands. After leaving Qin Wu's place, Lin soon directly returned to his own blessed enclave. Zhuang Shilu, Tang Qiu, Yun Tianming, Nan Bohong, Muyun Zheng sitting cross-legged, Lin soon recalled what had happened in Yuanqing Pavilion. In his heart, he had already remembered those big shots who could be regarded as his enemies. Now, he might not be able to take revenge on them. But in the future, sooner or later, he would have to compete with these old things who were hiding in the dark. The next step is to plan to become a disciple of Yuanqing Pavilion, but this step requires opportunity, Lin soon pondered. He had already become a core disciple. If he went up, he could enter the 3 pavilions to cultivate. However, this step was as difficult as ascending to heaven, because this meant that his identity would no longer be a simple successor. He would begin to come into contact with and wield some authority. For example, if he entered Yuanqing Pavilion, he would only be a successor, but he would be in charge of some matters related to selection and assessment. Although his authority was not great, he would have the opportunity to continue to be promoted to deputy deacon, deacon, elder, and deputy pavilion master. For example, Yuansu Pavilion's successor, Chao Zonglin, could be in charge of distributing the salaries of the sect disciples. This was also considered a considerable authority. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. Being in charge of the distribution of salaries, he would naturally be the first to enjoy the various salaries of the sect. But it was extremely difficult to become a disciple of the 3 pavilions. First of all, he had to be a core disciple of the 9 Peaks. Second, he needed to get into the top 10 in the 9 Peaks discussion. Finally, he needed to be recommended by a big shot. Although there were many core disciples of the 9 Peaks, there were only 10 who could get into the top 10 in the 9 Peaks discussion. Of course, there were other ways to enter the 3 pavilions. For example, as long as a big shot with the identity of Deputy Pavilion Master came forward, he could be admitted as an exception. Another example was that as long as he completed 3 9-star tasks, he could also exchange for a qualification to enter the 3 pavilions for cultivation. I just joined the sect not long ago, and now I have become a core disciple. If I go to ask Deputy Pavilion Master Fang Daoping to accept me into Yuanqing Pavilion, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Even if he agrees, Tang Qiu, the old guy, will never agree. Lin Sun was very sure that after today's incident, Tang Qiu, the old guy, would probably hate him to the bone. Under such circumstances, how could he give him a chance to enter Yuanqing Pavilion? It seems that I can only get a 9-star task. Lin Sun thought of one thing. If he wanted to go to the Book Mountain to read the Immortal Inheritance, he also needed to complete 3 9-star tasks. In addition to cultivation, the descendants of the 9 Peaks of Yuan sect would also go out to travel, and most of the travel was related to carrying out sect tasks. Lin soon decided to go to Yuan Su Pavilion Treasure Hall to see if there was a suitable task for him. As he was thinking, Lin Sun's heart moved, an abyssal sword cauldron quietly emerged. A breath of life woke up from abyssal sword cauldron. Summer solstice. Lin Sun's heart trembled. In his spiritual awareness, Summer Solstice, who was nourished by the Nirvana order, woke up quietly at this moment. Indescribable joy welled up in Lin Sun's heart, making him lose control of his emotions. Summer Solstice, you finally wake up. In his field of vision, a black hooded robe covered Summer Solstice's slender and delicate body. Under the brim of the hat was a beautiful face that could make the world pale in comparison. Her slender eyelashes fluttered like small combs, and she opened her clear, and bright eyes. Even though they had been together for many years, when Lin Sun saw Summer Solstice's beautiful face, he still felt dazzled. Her facial features were like a masterpiece of God. Her black eyebrows were as black as ink, her pink lips were moist, her skin was smooth, and her nose was straight. She was so beautiful that it made people's hearts tremble. She was like a legendary fairy who should not exist in the world. Anyone would find it difficult to suppress the shock in their heart when facing such an appearance. As early as when Lin Sun entered the eternal world for the first time in Cloud Shadow Village of Fallen God Ridge, Summer Solstice fell into a deep sleep because of her severe injuries. Unlike in the past, this time Summer Solstice slept in Abyssal Sword Cauldron and was nurtured by the Nirvana Order, and also experienced an incredible nirvana. Until now, more than 10 years had passed. Summer Solstice finally woke up from that wonderful nirvana silence. Lin Sun, I'm hungry. Summer Solstice's voice was as clear as the sounds of nature. Lin Sun was stunned by her words, and he could not help but feel a sense of familiarity that he had not felt for a long time. In the past years, whether in Feiyun Village in the mortal world, in the ancient Desolation territory, or on the Starry Sky Ancient Road, every time Summer Solstice woke up, she would directly say that she was hungry. There was no excitement or joy when she saw Lin Sun again. However, the more it was like this, the more excited and happy Lin Sun was. Because this was Summer Solstice. She had always been so different. I've collected a lot of delicious food for you over the years. Wait a moment. Although Lin Sun was excited and happy, he also knew that this was the ancestral court of Yuan Sect. Once Summer Solstice appeared, it was very likely to cause some disturbance. He got up and activated all the restrictions of the blessed cave. Then, he took a deep breath and carried Summer Solstice out of the Abyssal Sword Cauldron. At this moment, an invisible ripple of the order quietly emerged. Lin Sun's heart tightened. He remembered that when he was in Chaotian City in the vast Thousand Battles domain, he had been blocked by the Haotian Order when he intended to put Martial Uncle Kong Ji into the Abyssal Sword Cauldron. But he was not nervous, because the Nirvana Order was there. It was the Nirvana Order that resolved the investigation from the Haotian Order. Sure enough, when the mysterious power of the Order emerged, the Nirvana Order swept out like a lotus pattern and resolved the invisible power of the Order. It was done. Lin Sun smiled knowingly and was completely relaxed. Summer Solstice looked around and looked at Lin Sun. Her voice was clear and ethereal. Where's the food? She was always like this. When Lin Sun was around, she no longer cared about other things in this world. In other words, she never cared about other things in this world. As long as Lin Sun was around, it was fine. Lin Sun waved his sleeves, and all kinds of exotic fruits and delicacies were displayed in front of Summer Solstice in order. Summer Solstice was never a person who was polite to Lin Sun. She sat cross-legged on the ground and began to focus on the food in front of her. Her speed was not fast, but she ate extremely fast. Lin Sun looked at her with a smile and introduced the origin of the food to Summer Solstice. His heart was full of joy and joy. When he was with Summer Solstice, he would never think about other things, because the scene of being together with her was enough to immerse him in it. Lin Sun didn't notice that outside the blessed enclave, a big fat cat with silky white fur quietly appeared and squatted there. A pair of green eyes glowed with obscure and unpredictable light. Eat slowly. There's still a lot, enough for you to eat for a long time. In the cave residence, Lin Sun's voice was gentle and affectionate. In his eyes, after more than 10 years of nourishment and recovery from the Nirvana Order, Summer Solstice's injuries had been completely healed, and her whole body was full of vitality. Although he could not see what benefits Summer Solstice had gained from the Nirvana Order, it made Lin Sun feel more at ease. As long as Summer Solstice was safe, it was fine. Hungry, I'm hungry too. I want to eat meat and drink. A sudden howl came from the Abyssal Sword Cauldron, startling Lin Sun. Then he realized who the owner of the voice was. Uncle Master is awake too? Lin Sun was surprised. What a day it was! Good things kept happening one after another. P.S. Send it to me. What a day it was. Chapter 28:10. Outside the world of gods, Kong Ju's chest was penetrated by the sword of judgment of Wang family and he was seriously injured. Later, Lin Sun placed him in the Abyssal Sword Cauldron and there was no sound from him these years. At this time, Kong Ju woke up. Lin Sun immediately asked Kong Ju to come out. Kong Ju sat on the ground with his legs crossed, took the wine gourd handed by Lin Sun, and grabbed a yellow beast leg and ate it. Kong Ju's hair was disheveled and dirty, but he looked very handsome. Lin Sun looked at him carefully and finally felt relieved. Kong Ju's injuries had obviously healed, but his mind was still muddled. Xie Zhi looked at Kong Ju doubtfully and didn't ask. But Lin Sun explained, "His name is Kong Ju, my martial uncle." Xie Zhi nodded slightly and continued to immerse herself in all kinds of delicious food. "Martial uncle, do you remember me?" Lin Sun asked tentatively. Back then, outside the world of mysteries, Kong Ju had briefly recovered his consciousness and cultivation. He displayed boundlessly terrifying might and killed those undying beings until they pissed their pants in terror. Thinking of the scene at that time, Lin Sun couldn't help trembling. However, what disappointed him was that Kong Ju minded his own business drinking and eating meat, completely ignoring him. Lin Sun grabbed Kong Ju's wine gourd and said, "Martial uncle, do you really not remember me? It was I who took you away from Chaotian City." "Drink, I want to drink." Kong Ju was anxious and shouted to grab the wine gourd. "Then you answer my question, and I will give you wine," Lin Sun said. Kong Ju looked Lin Sun up and down, but his eyes were full of confusion. "I don't know who you are, but since you took me away, you will definitely let me drink." Lin Sun was speechless and returned the wine gourd to Kong Ju. He quietly released his spiritual awareness and swept into Kong Ju's body to check, but found that there was nothing in Kong Ju's body at all. "It's really strange. It seems that if I can't repair the martial uncle's mind, his mind and cultivation can't be restored," Lin Sun pondered. When he was in Nirvana, the master of the square-inch master once said that Kong Ju's mind had a problem when he was seeking for the immortal supreme way. If he wanted to help her repair her Tao heart, he naturally had to start with the Tao of the undying exalt. This meant that only Lin Sun could help Kong Ju in this world. That was because he was the lone lotus that the master of the core area had been waiting for throughout the ages. He possessed the order of Nirvana, and as long as he stepped onto the path of the eternal Tao, he would definitely come into contact with the mysteries of the eternal paragon Tao. As the Taoist hymn left behind by the master of the square inch said, "The path of an undying supreme being, nirvanic rebirth in the heavens. Eternal oblivion tribulation, a lone lotus bloomed." Every sentence of this Taoist hymn contained great meaning, which was closely related to Lin Sun's future cultivation. "When I set foot on the immortal Tao, I will definitely help Uncle Master recover his mind. Master told me to bring you back to the starry sky ancient path," Lin Sun said softly. Kong Ju turned a deaf ear to Lin Sun and continued eating and drinking as if he didn't know Lin Sun was talking to him. "The wine is good and so is the food. Do you mind if I have a taste?" Suddenly, a low and dignified voice resounded. Lin Sun was stiff all over, and he saw a big fat white cat had walked in at some time. It walked slowly, as if there was no sound, and gently wagged its fluffy tail. While speaking, the big white cat had squatted on one side, picked up a grilled fish with its paw, and tasted it gently. At this moment, Lin Sun's whole body tightened, and his hair stood on end. He couldn't calm down at all. Why did this mysterious white cat come here? The power of prohibition around the blessed enclave seemed to be non-existent. Xie Zhi raised her head in confusion and glanced at the big white cat, but still didn't speak. As for Kong Ju, he didn't even look at the big white cat, and he was drinking happily. This is a senior of the ancestral court of Yuan sect. "Don't be nervous," Lin Sun hurriedly explained to Xie Zhi. However, he himself was very nervous. It couldn't be helped. This big white cat with silky and shiny fur actually had enough power to be fatal. But whether it was Xie Zhi, Kong Ju or the big white cat, they all seemed to be very calm. They ate and drank without interfering with each other. There was a strange sense of harmony in the atmosphere. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun opened his eyes wide. After a while, he calmed down a little bit. The origin of the big white cat was definitely not simple. It didn't come here just to eat and drink, but Lin Sun couldn't figure out why it came here. Was it Xie? Was it Martial Uncle Kong Ju? Or Nirvana Order? Anything else? Xie suddenly asked. The food had been wiped out. As Xie spoke, Kong Ju and the big white cat also looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun's body was slightly stiff again, and he said, "Of course." As he spoke, he took out all kinds of delicacies related to eating and drinking that he had stored over the years. Xie, Kong Ju and the big white cat immediately withdrew their eyes from Lin Sun and returned to eating and drinking. This feeling was so weird that Lin Sun didn't know what to do for a while. He had been through countless storms and dangers in the past, but he had never felt so uneasy before. After a long time, Kong Ju, whose cheeks were red and his eyes were blurred, burped and took a long breath. He looked at the big white cat beside him for the first time. Then, he reached out to pick up the fat body of the big white cat and put it on the ground. Then he raised his head and pillowed on the big white cat. This scene made Lin Sun break out in a cold sweat and almost stopped him. When he saw that the big white cat didn't resist at all from beginning to end, Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. What was going on? "Lin Sun, I want to sleep too." Xie also finished eating and said in a clear voice. "Well, okay." Lin Sun was absent-minded. All his thoughts were on Kong Ju and the big white cat, worrying that something unpredictable would happen. Xie didn't notice anything at all. He came to the bed on the side of the cave residence and slept. "Taoist brother, you really don't remember me?" The big white cat's green eyes were filled with sadness and melancholy. Its voice also became low and bleak. "In the past, you and I were like before, drinking and eating meat and talking about the great Tao. How carefree was that? Now I've fallen into a state where I'm neither a human nor a ghost, and you've also become infatuated and lost your mind." When it finished speaking, it let out a long sigh. Kong Ju, who was lying on the big white cat, let out snoring sounds in his sleep. His messy hair was dirty, and it formed a stark contrast with the snow-white and smooth fur. It was only then that Lin Sun suddenly realized that the big white cat had come for Martial Uncle Kong Ju. And by the looks of it, the two of them should be old friends. When he thought of this, Lin Sun instantly felt much more at ease. But in his heart, he thought that Martial Uncle Kong Ju was the leader of the first batch of people who went to the eternal world in the ancient era. He was regarded as the guide of the ancient era, and even his master respected him. It could be imagined that after he reached the eternal world, with Martial Uncle Kong Ju's abilities, he must have made a great name for himself. In the past, when he was in Nirvana of freedom, his master had said that Martial Uncle Kong Ju had been bewitched by an immortal giant from the 8th heaven, and that was why he had come to Nirvana of freedom to seize the serendipity related to the path of the immortal supreme. And a person who could be bewitched by an immortal giant from the 8th heaven was definitely not an ordinary person. After all, forget about being bewitched, ordinary people would not even have the chance to be used. At this moment, the big white cat's words undoubtedly proved that Martial Uncle Kong Ju must have had an extremely glorious and brilliant past in the eternal world. Summer solstice slept soundly. Kong Ju slept soundly. In this blessed land, only Lin Sun and the big white cat were awake. The big white cat was obviously reminiscing about the past, and its eyes were filled with sadness and melancholy. Even though Lin Sun had countless questions in his heart, he still forced himself not to disturb the other party. Lin Sun. After a long time, the big white cat looked at Lin Sun with its green eyes, and there was already a dignified expression on its face. It was just that its dignified image was obviously reduced when Kong Ju used its body as a pillow. "Senior, what can I do for you?" Lin Sun asked. "Don't let her appear in the Yuan sect with him," the big white cat said. "Even if you have the Nirvana order, you can't do this anymore." Lin Sun's eyes narrowed slightly, and his heart was already in turmoil. He could not calm down. He had cultivated for so many years, and the big white cat was the first existence to see through his nirvana order. The power of the order of the Yuan sect has long surpassed the scope of the heaven realm. Even if the nirvana order can resist it, it will cause the order of the Yuan sect to fluctuate. The big white cat's voice was dignified. This time I came, and no one else noticed anything, but next time, it's hard to guarantee that no one will notice. Lin Sun's expression changed slightly, and only then did he realize that it was when he released Summer Solstice from the Abyssal Sword Cauldron that caused the order of the Yuan sect to react, and the confrontation with the Nirvana order seemed to have dissolved the order of the Yuan sect, but this abnormal change attracted the attention of the big white cat. It was precisely because of this that it was attracted here. "Thank you for reminding me," Lin Sun said seriously, "but I still don't know your name, can I tell you?" The big white cat shook its head. "Let's talk about it later. Originally, I would only meet you after you set foot on the path of immortality. This was just an accident." As it spoke, it shook its body, got rid of Kong Ju's head that was resting on it, stood up, and walked out of the cave residence. It was obviously going to leave. "Senior." Lin Sun was full of doubts, but he was not willing to let it leave just like that before he could ask. But the next moment, the big white cat disappeared into thin air, not even leaving a trace or aura. This made Lin Sun speechless. He had already recognized martial Uncle Kong Ju. Was it still necessary to be so mysterious? At this moment, the deep and dignified voice of the big white cat sounded in Lin Sun's heart. "If you want to rise in the Yuan sect as soon as possible, seize the opportunity and go to the Yuan Pavilion to cultivate as soon as possible." "Yuan Pavilion?" Lin Sun was surprised. "How can you be so stupid? You can also fight for the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master if you become the Vice Master of Yuan Qing Pavilion. Compared to entering Yuan Qing Pavilion can give you more opportunities." The big white cat's voice sounded in Lin Sun's heart again. Lin Sun finally understood. P.S. The second watch is a little late. Chapter 28:11. The big white cat left. Lin Sun fell into deep thought. The appearance of the big white cat seemed unexpected, but it was also reasonable. What he could be sure of now was that the big white cat had already seen through his identity when they first met in the third round of assessment. It knew that he had the Nirvana order and that he came to the Yuan sect to become the master of Yuan Qing Pavilion. It could only be certain that the successor of Mind Mountain told the other party in advance. Even senior sister Juanhuan was kept in the dark about this matter. Because if she had known that the big white cat was here, senior sister Juanhuan would not have gone to the Zhuang clan and hoped to get help from Zhuang Shirlu. But who was the big white cat? Lin Sun thought of the scene of the big white cat meeting with martial Uncle Kong Ju and its sad sigh. He couldn't help but have a thought in his mind. The master of Yuan Kong Pavilion, Yen Ji. It was said that this pavilion master was an old monster who cultivated crazily. He cultivated himself to the point that only a wisp of his spirit was left. This was the same as martial Uncle Kong Ju. The latter was also obsessed with seeking the path of immortality, so much so that there was a big problem with his state of mind. He was reduced to a state of confusion. Moreover, the big white cat suggested that he enter Yuan Kong Pavilion to cultivate before leaving. All of this made Lin Sun suspect that the other party was the master of Yuan Kong Pavilion, who only had a wisp of his spirit left. But when he thought that a dignified pavilion master, a supreme existence in the ancestral court of Yuan sect, had turned into a big fat white cat, Lin Sun felt strange. But Lin Sun didn't have time to think about it. He didn't dare to forget the warning of the big white cat. It was also the words of the big white cat that made him realize that there was a power of order in the ancestral court of Yuan sect that surpassed the heavenly stage. That was naturally the divine stage. Thinking about it, Lin Sun's heart trembled. As far as he knew, even among the 10 immortal giants of the 8th heaven, There seemed to be few who could control this legendary power of order that only existed in the ninth heaven. Lin Sun didn't delay, and placed Kong Ju and Xia Ji in the abyssal sword cauldron. Now that they were in Yuan sect, even if they woke up, they couldn't leave the abyssal sword cauldron. Otherwise, without the protection of the Nirvana order, they would probably be noticed by the order of Yuan sect immediately. However, Lin Sun was still very happy about what he had experienced today. Xia Ji was fine, and Uncle Master Kong Ju had also woken up, allowing him to learn some news related to the big white cat. Just these things alone were enough to make him feel better. One day later, Lin Sun came to the Hall of Treasure again with the new sect token he had just obtained. "Hey Lin Sun? Why is this guy here again? Don't tell me he's trying to cause another huge commotion?" There were many figures in the hall. When they saw Lin Sun, they couldn't help showing strange expressions, as if they saw a fierce beast rushing in. Lin Sun didn't know that his fame in the Origin sect's ancestral court was like the sun in the sky. Because of him, cracks had appeared in the Dao hearts of Li Zhongyuan and Shen Zidao, the two outstanding heirs of the Black Heart. Because of him, the successor of the Origin Void Pavilion, Chao Zonglin, was punished and imprisoned in the Reflection Prison for a year. It was also because of him that Deacon Zhuang Shirlu of the Origin Purity Pavilion was stripped of his power and imprisoned in the Reflection Prison for 100 years. All these sensational events happened in less than half a month. Who could ignore the existence of Lin Sun? Some people admired him, some respected him, some kept him at a distance, and some hated him. But no matter what, Lin Sun was completely famous. Just like at this time, when he came to the Hall of Treasure, he attracted a lot of attention at the first time. Huang Qingyu, the successor of the Origin Void Pavilion, greets junior brother Lin Sun. "May I know why you are here?" A successor of the Origin Purity Pavilion, who claimed to be Huang Qingyu, greeted Lin Sun in person with a kind smile and a good attitude. But he was a little anxious in his heart, for fear that Lin Sun would make trouble again. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, "Senior brother, please come with me. I'm here to see if there are any suitable tasks for me." Huang Qingyu was relieved at once and said with a smile, "Junior brother, come with me." He led Lin Sun to the area where the tasks of the sect were issued. There were 9 light screens, representing 9 kinds of tasks from 1 star to 9 stars. Among them, the 1-star tasks were the most, involving a wide variety of tasks, such as refining weapons, refining elixirs, keeping animals, spiritual plants, and so on. Of course, completing a 1-star task only gave 1 star merit, which could be exchanged for the least amount of benefit. The types of 9-star tasks were the rarest, but there were more than 10 of them. Huang Qingyu said, "Junior brother, I wonder which kind of sect task you are more interested in? Or is there something you are best at? I can give you some advice." Lin Sun said directly, "Senior brother, I'm here to take on a 9-star task." "So it's a 9-star task." Huang Qingyu suddenly realized something was wrong when he said this. He opened his eyes wide and said in surprise, 9-star task. He looked incredulous. Lin Sun nodded, yes. As he spoke, his eyes had already looked at the more than 10 kinds of 9-star tasks that appeared on the 9th light screen. Refine a complete power of order above the 6th grade of heaven rank, and you can get a 9-star merit. Kill the Lord of Evil Spirits, whose strength is equivalent to the heavenly longevity realm, and take its heart, and you can get a 9-star merit. Collect a source of chaos of universe, and you can get a 9-star merit. Lin Sun was very familiar with these tasks. He had already seen them in the White Jade Book on the first day he entered the sect. But he didn't expect that these 9-star tasks were still there, and no one had taken them. Looking at Lin Sun's serious look, Huang Qingyu realized that Lin Sun, who had been in the limelight recently, was not joking. He couldn't help reminding Lin Sun, "Junior brother, although the sect stipulates that the 9-star task can only be taken by the descendants of the great ancestor realm, no one has been able to successfully complete the task over the years. This is also the most difficult task for the descendants in our sect. Lin Sun nodded and continued to look at those tasks. Huang Qingyu thought for a moment and said, "Junior brother, if you really want to take on the 9-star task, I suggest you find some senior brothers and sisters to carry it out together. In this way, the chance of success will be much greater." "I can find someone to help me?" Lin Sun was surprised. "Of course." Huang Qingyu laughed, "However, even if I find someone to help me, they must be in the same realm, and the total number of people carrying out the task cannot exceed 3. The merit obtained after completing the task can only be counted on the person who takes the task." "I see," Lin Sun said, pointing to the 9th light curtain and said, "Senior brother, this and this task, I will take it." Huang Qingyu's smile froze, and he was startled. After a while, he coughed and said, "Junior brother, you can only take one 9-star task at a time, no more." Lin Sun frowned and said, "Then I will take the task of killing the Lord of Evil Spirits first." Huang Qingyu said with a strange look in his eyes, "Junior brother, are you sure?" Lin Sun asked, "Senior brother, do you think it's inappropriate?" Huang Qingyu smiled bitterly, "Not really, but the Lord of Evil Spirits is extremely cunning and cruel. In the past thousands of years, many people have taken this task, but without exception they all failed. The reason is that the Lord of Evil Spirits is a spirit body born from the aura of the evil. After reaching the heavenly longevity realm, it no longer fears the power of order. This also means that even if Junior Brother borrows the power of order to kill the Lord of Evil Spirits at the heavenly longevity realm, it will be useless." Obviously, Huang Qingyu thought that the reason why Lin Sun took this task was to master the trump card of borrowing the power of order. This was a subconscious thought, because in the ancestral court of Yuan school, almost every successor had a secret treasure of order, which could borrow the power of order to threaten the existence of a mortal level when killing the enemy. But the Lord of Evil Spirits in the heavenly longevity realm was different, and the secret treasure of order was of no use at all. And if they fought with real strength, Huang Qingyu didn't think that Lin Sun, who was in the ancestor realm, would be the opponent of the Lord of Evil Spirits in the heavenly longevity realm. But Lin Sun didn't think so much and said directly, "Senior brother, I will take this task." Huang Qingyu glanced at Lin Sun with a complicated look and said, "Since that's the case, I won't persuade you anymore. But to be clear, I'm not trying to persuade you to take such a difficult task." Lin Sun agreed with a smile. Not long after, Lin Sun left Treasure Hall with a sealed task jade slip. "Senior brother Huang, did Lin Sun really take the 9-star task?" As soon as Lin Sun left, many people gathered around and asked Huang Qingyu. "Yes, the task of killing the Lord of Evil Spirits," Huang Qingyu said. All of a sudden, the treasure hall was in an uproar, and there was a lot of noise. Others will not stop until they are shocked, but Junior Brother Lin still wants to make a big move. Carrying out the 9-star task alone? And hunting the Lord of Evil Spirits? Has he gone mad? This is called being bold. Even Senior Brother Shin Zidao was defeated by Junior Brother Lin Sun with one sword. Is there anything he doesn't dare to do? Hunting the Lord of Evil Spirits is different. In my opinion, Junior Brother Lin Sun will also return empty-handed. The news about Lin Sun taking the 9-star task spread quickly, and it caused a stir for a while. Some big shots couldn't help but be speechless. Lin Sun was really good at making trouble, wasn't he? Even Qin Wuyu, the head of the 9th peak, had a headache when he heard the news. Yesterday, he just told him to keep a low profile and restrain himself. But Lin Sun was going to carry out the 9-star sect task just one day later. Was this kid deliberately going to turn the world upside down before he was willing to rest? While the Yuan sect was discussing, Lin Sun had already taken action. Holding the sect token in his hand, Lin Sun smoothly left through an ancient transmission formation built in the Yuan realm. One day later, in the depths of the infinite star sea, a broken and chaotic universe appeared. Vortexes condensed from the light and shadow of worlds dotted the different corners of that universe. It was said that there were more than 3,600 vortexes, and each vortex led to a completely different world. Lin Sun followed the instructions on the task Jade Slip and found a vortex portal in the chaotic and broken universe in less than 15 minutes. Through the vortex portal, he could reach the realm of Sin. Chapter 28:12. Sin Realm. A chaotic world filled with blood and evil aura. In this world, there were countless resentful spirits, evil spirits, and blood demons. According to the Jade Slip, in the beginning, when the Sin Realm was still in a state of chaos, there was a divine marrow mine. It was precisely because of this mine that numerous undying great figures madly fought and killed each other, to the point that this expanse of chaos was covered in blood and buried a great deal of evil and baleful energy. When the Sin Realm evolved from chaos into a world, the world was filled with blood and evil aura. Not a blade of grass grew, and everything withered. Resentful spirits, evil spirits, blood demons, and other spirits could be seen everywhere. After countless years of change, it became the Sin Realm today. Swoosh! Lin Sun's figure appeared in the air. He looked around and saw that the world was red like blood. There were blood-red mountains and rivers everywhere. Even the sky was filled with scarlet stars. Whoosh! A gust of evil wind blew over like a violent space turbulence. Hundreds and thousands of ferocious resentful souls, like bloody lightning, pounced on Lin Sun at the same time. The scene was like a group of evil spirits rushing out of hell. Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Thousands of blood-red resentful spirits let out shrill screams, and then their bodies exploded, turning into wisps of blood mist and dissipating. Lin Sun moved forward with his hands behind his back. The Sin Realm was very dangerous. According to the Jade Slip, even the Juetian Emperor would die here if he didn't have a trump card to protect himself. When the great figures of the Yuan sect discovered this realm, they wanted to destroy it, but they changed their mind in the end. The reason was that although this realm was dangerous, it was a natural training ground. It was very suitable for the descendants of the Yuan sect to come here to temper themselves, especially the Lord of Evil Spirits, who had the strength of the heavenly longevity realm. Its heart was called the Heart of Evil. It looked like a great evil object, but it could be used to temper one's state of mind. When cultivating, one only needed to hang the Heart of Evil in front of one's body, and one's state of mind would be attacked and attacked horribly, causing all kinds of inner demons to appear. Cultivators could fight against them with their own willpower. The more inner demons they killed, the tougher and stronger their state of mind would be. When the day came that he was no longer affected by the energy of the Heart of the Evil, it would also mean that he possessed a mental state that was sufficient to attain the eternal Tao. Of course, cultivating with the Heart of Evil for an ordinary person was no different than courting death, and it was extremely easy for one's mental state to suffer from qi deviation and perish. Lin Sun was also interested in it. The tempering of one's state of mind could be extremely profound and abstruse. Walking in the realm of sin, Lin Sun's speed wasn't fast, but it wasn't slow either. With a single step, he could travel tens of thousands of miles. All along the way, he noticed that this expanse of the heavens and the earth was simply a lair of evil, and vengeful spirits, blood devils, evil spirits could be seen everywhere. These evil beings had violent auras and no intelligence to speak of. They fought and devoured each other in order to strengthen themselves and achieve a transformation in strength. It was extremely brutal. Lin Sun was not interested in hunting these evil creatures. It didn't take long for Lin Sun's spiritual awareness to detect a cold thought. He immediately stopped and looked at a blood-colored river in the distance. Oh no! The people of Yuan sect are here again. At the bottom of the blood-colored river, the cold thought produced violent fluctuations, as if it was frightened. Boom! The next moment, Lin Sun grabbed with his big hand, and the blood-colored river, which was thousands of meters long, was caught up like a blood-colored python. At the bottom of the dried-up river, a blood-colored figure appeared, surrounded by blood mist, and transformed into a human shape like a teenager. He wanted to escape at the first moment, but was caught by Lin Sun through the air and brought in front of him. "Where is the Lord of Evil Spirits?" Lin Sun asked. This teenager was transformed from a blood devil, and his whole body was steaming with blood. His strength was comparable to that of an Emperor realm cultivator, and he already had some intelligence. 72 stars of evil treasured land, the blood devil said in a trembling voice, and his face was full of terror. "You lead the way. When we get there, I will let you leave alive," Lin Sun said. The blood devil dared not disobey, and led the way obediently. 2 hours later, a giant city appeared in the void, with 72 scarlet stars floating above it. Each of the stars carried endless evil chi, as if it had absorbed the souls of hundreds of millions of gods and demons. These 72 great stars formed a strange and mysterious grand formation that circulated in the sky. Rays of light that emitted a strong aura of blood were continuously absorbed by the huge city. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed slightly, and he felt a sense of danger from the giant city. That is the 72 stars of evil treasured land, where the Lord of Evil Spirits resides all year round, swallowing the evil chi of heaven and earth, and living a carefree and happy life. The eyes of the blood devil showed blazing envy. "You can leave now," Lin Sun said casually. The blood devil turned around and left, not daring to stay for a moment. Lin Sun, on the other hand, walked towards the giant city. His divine awareness spread out, and he instantly captured that there was a black altar in the center of the giant city, on which sat a mighty figure like a god or demon. Even though he was sitting cross-legged, his figure was thousands of meters high, and there were scarlet dazzling immortal laws hanging down all over his body. Vaguely, it gave people a sense of majesty. The Lord of Evil Spirits. A trace of coldness flashed in the depths of Lin Sun's eyes. Almost at the same time, the mighty figure sitting cross-legged suddenly opened his eyes, and his scarlet pupils were like a pair of scarlet suns, showing indifference and coldness. The successor of Yuan sect? In the 9,300 years since the death of the previous Lord of Evil Spirits, there have been 19 batches of successors of the Yuan sect who came here. Some came in groups of 3 to 5, while some came in groups of 2. All of them came for my heart, but they all failed. I'm still alive and well. The Lord of Evil Spirits opened his mouth, and his voice shook the world, like the roar of a god or demon, shocking people. Boom! Countless scarlet torrents suddenly rushed out of the giant city, like a great river, sweeping towards Lin Sun. In the rolling scarlet torrents, huge demon-like figures emerged, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, roaring and shaking the sky, suppressing Lin Sun. The world shook violently, and the figures that besieged Lin Sun disappeared like moths flying into the fire. Even the countless scarlet torrents were shattered and exploded in the void. Lin Sun strode over, and the light on his body burst out, and the countless scarlet evil spirits were all destroyed. He was extremely powerful. Humph! On the black altar in the center of the giant city, the Lord of Evil Spirits snorted coldly. Suddenly, a huge white bone hand appeared out of thin air, about an acre in size, and every knuckle was surrounded by the dazzling immortal laws, oppressing the void to explode. It was extremely terrifying. Lin Sun suddenly took a deep breath, and the void around him suddenly collapsed, turning into an unfathomable abyss, swallowing the sky. Boom! The abyss and the giant white bone hand collided, and the light of the great way splashed and spread violently, causing the surrounding world to show signs of collapse. In the end, the giant white bone hand was forcefully grinded away. You can resist the immortal laws. You are one of the top 10 core disciples of the Yuan sect? The voice of the Lord of Evil Spirits sounded, and it was filled with surprise. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. This damn thing seemed to have some understanding of the Yuan sect. However, he ignored it and rushed towards the giant city. Boom! At this time, Lin Sun was like a supreme Tao master walking in the world. With every step he took, there was an unparalleled sword chi above his head that soared into the sky, aimed at a scarlet star, and directly tore it apart. In the blink of an eye, the 72 stars that had transformed into the formation were smashed into pieces. That scene was like a sword cutting the sky. "You're courting death." The figure of the Lord of Evil Spirits appeared, and it was thousands of feet tall, covering the sky and the sun. The immortal laws all over its body surged like a waterfall, and its terrifying power penetrated the sky and the earth. It slapped towards Lin Sun. That was a power that belonged to the same longevity realm, and it was powerful enough to make any Emperor Realm cultivator despair. It was a pity that he met Lin Sun this time. In these years, he had already killed many Immortal Realm cultivators. Boom! The abyssal sword cauldron rushed out and clashed head-on with the Lord of Evil Spirit. Under the attack, Lin Sun's figure was pushed back dozens of feet, but he completely dissolved the power of the palm, and he was unharmed. This scene shocked the Lord of Evil Spirit. Although he had met many descendants of the Yuan sect over the years, in a head-on clash, almost all of them had to use some of their trump cards to be able to contend with him. For example, secret treasures and power that exceeded the scope of the Emperor Realm, and so on. And now, this was the first time he had met someone who could rely on their own battle strength to contend with him head-on. Go! Killing intent surged in the Lord of Evil Spirit's eyes. Suddenly, a snow-white finger bone appeared in front of him. It was 7 inches long like the remains of a god, and it glowed with shocking immortal energy. As soon as it appeared, it rushed towards Lin Sun. Under that finger, it seemed like it could crush the world and destroy all things. Lin Sun did not plan to fight the Lord of Evil Spirits to the end. At this moment, he suddenly used the Forbidden Passage ability, and his figure instantly appeared in front of the Lord of Evil Spirits. Poof! Within the abyssal sword cauldron, a Dao sword suddenly slashed out, and it cut open the Lord of Evil Spirits' chest. Blood poured out like a waterfall. No! By the time the Lord of Evil Spirits reacted, his heart had already been taken away. He could not help but let out a painful roar that resounded through the sky. He rushed towards Lin Sun like a madman. But how could Lin Sun give him a chance? The moment the heart was taken away, he teleported with all his strength and fled into the distance. Boom! The Lord of Evil Spirits roared as he chased, but in just a moment, the aura on his body collapsed at an astonishing speed. In the end, he smashed hard on the ground, and his body, which was thousands of feet long, cracked and turned into rolling blood mist that dissipated between heaven and earth. His heart was the core of his cultivation. Now that it had been taken away by Lin Sun, it was already impossible for him to survive in this world. Far away, Lin Sun stopped. When he turned his head and saw this scene, his expression was calm. Compared to a true immortal in the Heaven Longevity realm, the Lord of Evil Spirits' fighting methods were extremely crude and unbearable. It was far less of a threat than a Heaven Longevity realm practitioner. For Lin Sun, killing such an evil being was simply not a sense of accomplishment. Retracting his gaze, Lin Sun looked at the abyssal sword cauldron. A scarlet heart was suppressed within. This heart seemed to contain a demonic world, and there was a strange scene of demons dancing wildly, mountains of corpses and seas of blood. There was even a faint sound of ghosts wailing and wolves howling. It was extremely horrifying. This was the heart of evil spirits. Chapter 28:13. Putting away the heart of evil, Lin Sun, who was about to leave, suddenly thought of something and went back the way he came. In front of the huge floating city, Lin Sun spread out his divine sense. After sensing for a long time, he couldn't help but frown. In the previous battle, the Lord of Evil had used a bone finger, which should be an extraordinary immortal Taoist weapon. But now, the treasure had disappeared. Lin Sun subconsciously looked up at the huge city in the distance. In his divine sense, he saw a familiar figure sitting cross-legged on the black altar in the center of the city. It was the gore fiend who had led the way for him before. "Why did you come back?" The gore fiend opened his eyes in surprise. Obviously, he had also noticed Lin Sun outside the city. "I didn't expect you to hide so well. You even deceived me." As Lin Sun spoke, he came to the huge city and approached the black altar. The gore fiend looked uncertain and said, "You have already taken the heart of evil, which is enough to exchange for a 9-star merit. Why did you come back?" Lin Sun was even more surprised. "You seem to know Yuan sect very well?" The gore fiend said expressionlessly, "For countless years, the descendants of Yuan sect have come here many times. It's very easy for them to get this information." Lin Sun nodded and looked at the black altar. The altar was shaped like an open eye. It was extremely strange. Lin Sun couldn't tell what material it was made of, but it gave off a sinful and evil aura. In the past, the Lord of Evil Spirits had regarded this altar as a cultivation ground. "Where is the finger bone?" Lin Sun looked at the gore fiend again. "I can't give it to you. If you want to leave this place alive, you should leave this world as soon as possible. Otherwise, even the sect token in your hand can't save you." The gore fiend got up from sitting cross-legged. His expression was calm, and so was his voice. He was completely different from the fear he showed when he first saw Lin Sun. Lin Sun stared at the gore fiend for a moment and was about to say something. "Someone is coming. Hide in the altar." The gore fiend's expression changed slightly. He waved his sleeve, and an underground door quietly appeared at the bottom of the black altar. Lin Sun was surprised. "Why should I hide?" "Because they want to kill you," the gore fiend said sternly. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and asked, "Who?" "You'll see for yourself later. You'd better hide now, or I'll be killed by you," the blood demon youth said anxiously. "All right, I'll trust you this once." With that, Lin Sun flashed into the underground portal. There was actually a miraculous secret realm beneath the altar. However, it was extremely small and only covered an area of 3 kilometers. There were meditation cushions, furnaces, beds, tables, and other things within it, and it was neat and tidy. This surprised Lin Sun again. This was the realm of sin, a place that reeked of blood. The black altar was the place where the Lord of Evil Spirits cultivated. Yet, underneath the altar, there was such a simple and clean secret realm. Who wouldn't be surprised? Immediately, Lin Sun was attracted by a bronze mirror. The mirror was smooth and reflected the scene outside the black sacrificial altar. The blood demon youth stood there, seemingly extremely fearful. His expression kept changing. Not long after, there was a sound of something breaking through the air. A majestic figure with immortal chi appeared above the black sacrificial altar. This person was tall and had a dignified appearance. He stood there casually, but the aura he emitted was enough to disperse the blood-red evil chi in this world. Nan Bo Hong, the Third Peak's Lord. Lin Sun was shocked. He almost couldn't believe his eyes. Could he be the one that the blood demon youth said wanted to kill him? Where is he? Nan Bo Hong's eyes were cold as he looked down at the blood demon youth. Peak Lord, he has already left, the blood demon youth said in awe. Left? Nan Bo Hong's face darkened. A golden whip condensed in his palm, and he lashed it on the blood demon youth's body. The blood demon youth fell to the ground and twitched in pain. Peak Lord, please calm down. Junior brother Lin Sun is very powerful. I lured him here and tried to kill him with the help of the Lord of Evil Spirits. Who would have thought that the Lord of Evil Spirits was no match for him? The battle ended in a flash. I wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The blood demon youth endured the pain and explained. The words, Junior brother Lin Sun, shocked Lin Sun. He couldn't calm down anymore. Could it be that this blood demon youth was a senior brother of the Yuan sect? How was that possible? Nan Bo Hong asked with a gloomy face. How did he kill the Lord of Evil Spirits? Lord, please take a look. The blood demon youth took out a finger bone and pointed it in the void. The scene of Lin Sun killing the Lord of Evil Spirits appeared. Forbidden death magic. All of a sudden, Nan Bo Hong's expression kept changing. He was the third Peak Lord, an old man of the Nan clan, one of the 4 Eastern royal clans. He was also an immortal in the Nirvana realm. How could he not know that what Lin Sun used was a magic of the Devourer of the Abyss? If we don't kill him and let him become immortal, won't he become the second Luo Tongtian? No, he is the successor of Fang Xiyuan. His achievements in the future are destined to be more terrifying than Luo Tongtian. In the realm of sin, Nan Bo Hong no longer concealed his inner heart. His expression was filled with dense killing intent. That terrifying might oppressed the blood devil youth to the point that he felt suffocating. What a useless thing! Nan Bo Hong thought of how he missed such a good opportunity. He was so angry that he whipped the blood demon youth again. The latter was in so much pain that his whole body twitched. His body even showed signs of cracking. Peak Lord, when will you let me leave? Seeing that Nan Bo Hong was about to leave, the blood demon youth couldn't help but ask with a trembling voice. You ruined my plan. Don't even think about leaving in this lifetime. Nan Bo Hong's cold voice was still floating in the air. He had already disappeared. After a long time, the blood demon youth crawled up from the ground. His eyes were full of hatred. I knew it would be like this. You old bastards will suffer sooner or later. He waited for a long time until he was sure that Nan Bo Hong had left the Sin realm. Then, he opened the door under the altar and walked in. Lin Sun had been waiting there for a long time. Looking at the seriously injured blood demon youth, he raised his hand and threw a jade bottle to him. There are some healing medicines inside. The blood demon youth took the jade bottle and shook his head. It's useless. I already have the body of a blood demon. All the medicines in this world are poison to me. His voice was full of bitterness and disappointment. What's going on? Lin Sun asked. The blood demon youth sat down on the bed. He looked at Lin Sun and said, When you came here, I already got the news that I would take this opportunity to kill you in the Sin realm. So, I waited there on purpose and leaked my aura so that you would notice me. As expected, you were fooled. Speaking of this, the blood demon youth's expression changed. If you die, then so be it. If you live, I will find a chance to kill you. But you didn't do that. Instead, you helped me hide here and resolved a crisis, Lin Sun said. The blood demon youth mocked himself. Who knows what's wrong with me? I thought that I had lost my conscience, and that I would be an evil bastard for the rest of my life. But now that things have come to this, I have a glimmer of hope. You want me to help you get out of trouble? Lin Sun asked. The blood demon youth smiled. But his smile was full of sorrow. Get out of trouble? It's so easy. I can leave the Sin realm at any time. But if those old bastards find out, no matter where I hide, they can kill me with a single thought. Lin Sun could hear the sorrow and hatred in the blood demon youth's heart. He said, Can you tell me about your situation? Maybe I can help you. The blood demon youth said, Although the hope is slim, I can tell you. His eyes were full of reminiscence. A long time ago, he was also a descendant of Yuan sect. He had an impressive talent and foundation. He cultivated in the third peak. His strength was considered outstanding among the descendants. The Peak Lord Nan Bo Hong admired him very much. He promised to fight for all cultivation resources for him and help him to embark on the path of immortality. But the premise was that he had to swear by his Taoist heart to be loyal to Nan Bo Hong for life. This made him extremely disgusted and he didn't agree. Nan Bo Hong didn't say anything either. But from then on, his situation changed. The disciples of the third peak started to reject him. Even the cultivation resources of the sect were often embezzled by others. He knew that he had angered Nan Bo Hong and was given the cold shoulder. But he didn't care. Who would have thought that later on, almost all the descendants of the Third Peak, except for him, secretly swore to be loyal to Nan Bo Hong for life. This made him realize the seriousness of the problem. He decided to report this matter to Yuan Kong Pavilion. But who would have thought that on the day he reported Nan Bo Hong was fine. But he was the first one to suffer. Nan Bo Hong used the name of the Peak Lord to lure him out of the primordial realm and brought him to the Sin realm. He personally smashed his body, separated his spirit and imprisoned him here. From then on, he became a blood demon in the Sin realm. Knowing this, Lin Sun was shocked and said, "As a descendant of Yuan's sect, you suddenly disappeared. Didn't Yuan's sect investigate the truth? If it was just Nan Bo Hong alone, he wouldn't dare to do this. But there are many big shots behind him. When they deliberately murder a descendant like me, who would know the truth?" The blood demon young man's voice was low. "In these years, there have been many descendants who came to the Sin realm to train. Why didn't you ask them for help?" Lin Sun didn't understand. "If I asked for help, I would be harming them," the blood demon young man said. "No matter who knows the truth, if they dare to expose it, they will be killed. But you are different. Because even if I don't tell you this, Nan Bo Hong will still kill you. So you don't have to worry about it." After understanding this, Lin Sun realized that the ancestral court of Yuan's sect wasn't as peaceful as it seemed. There were countless darkness and bloodshed in the dark. If he didn't meet this blood demon young man, he wouldn't dare to believe that a peak lord like Nan Bo Hong would be so daring. P.S. There will be more updates tonight, but it will be very late. Chapter 28:14. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun said, "You didn't want to be in cahoots with Nan Bo Hong, but why do you listen to his orders this time?" Bloody Devil answered, "My sister, who joined the ancestral court of Yuan's sect with me, is cultivating in the Fourth Peak. She is the only one I can't let go of. Nan Bo Hong threatened me with her, so I had to obey him." His voice was calm, but there was a deep pain under the calmness. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said, "I may not be able to help you now, but when I set foot on the path of immortality, I will help you get rid of your troubles and clear your grievances." Nan Bo Hong was his enemy. What happened to Bloody Devil only strengthened Lin Sun's determination to get rid of Nan Bo Hong. Bloody Devil said, "I hope so." He didn't dare to have any hope, or in other words, he almost didn't have any hope. Nan Bo Hong was the head of the Third Peak, and there were more big shots behind him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suffered when he went to Yuan Kong Pavilion to expose Nan Bo Hong. Because Nan Bo Hong's authority couldn't affect Yuan Kong Pavilion at all. All this proved that there was more than one big shot who colluded with Nan Bo Hong. "May I know your name, senior brother?" Lin Sun asked. Bloody Devil was obviously touched by the word senior brother. After a while, he saluted seriously. "Gu Yujian, the successor of Yuan's sect, greets junior brother Lin Sun." Lin Sun returned the salute solemnly. Before leaving, Gu Yujian warned, "Junior brother, remember not to act alone when you go out to carry out tasks in the future. Otherwise, you will suffer the same disaster as today." Yuan Sect. Treasure Hall of Yuan Su Pavilion. It was very lively as usual. Many people were receiving tasks, and many people were exchanging merits after completing tasks. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly appeared in the hall with a flash. "Well, Lin Sun? You're back so soon? Could it be that the mission failed?" Huang Qingyu was also there. When he saw Lin Sun, he was surprised. Because it was less than a day since Lin Sun received the task. Immediately, he realized that his words would embarrass Lin Sun, so he said gently, "Junior brother, don't be discouraged. If you can't complete the task alone, find more people to act together." Before he finished, Lin interrupted him with a smile. "Senior brother, please have a look." A sealed heart of phantasm floated before Huang Qingyu's eyes. Huang Qingyu's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. This 9-star mission to hunt down the Lord of Evil Spirits had not been accepted for many years. The reason was that it was too difficult. In the past, who knew how many core disciples had gone to battle together, but in the end they all returned in failure. Who would have thought that Lin Sun would bring back the heart of evil in less than a day? For a moment, Huang Qingyu's heart was unable to calm down. At this moment, many people in the heavenly treasure hall saw the heart of the evil, and it couldn't help but cause an uproar. Who said that Junior Brother Lin would fail this time? Step out. Junior Brother Lin, he is too fierce, isn't he? The Lord of Evil Spirits wasn't afraid of the killing power of an Order artifact at all. How did he achieve this? Don't tell me he relied on his own cultivation. In the discussion, some people came forward and chatted with Lin Sun, expressing admiration and respect in their words. Ha ha, Junior Brother, you really gave me a big surprise. Huang Qingyu finally accepted the fact and didn't hesitate to praise Lin Sun. He also happily exchanged a 9-star merit for Lin Sun. This scene also attracted many envious eyes. 9-star merit. This was the highest reward in the sect task, which could be exchanged for some coveted cultivation resources from the sect. Not to mention other things, if it was exchanged for the immortal marrow, a 9-star merit could be exchanged for 100,000 caddies. What did this mean? The annual salary of a core disciple was only 24,000 caddies of immortal marrow. Of course, no one who possessed a 9-star merit point would be stupid enough to exchange for the immortal divine marrow. In the Origin Religion's ancestral court, there were some cultivation resources that everyone yearned for, and they could only be exchanged for with 9-star merit points. Senior Brother, please come with me. Lin Sun transmitted his voice to Huang Qingyu. Huang Qingyu was stunned at first and immediately dispersed the crowd. He came to the side of the hall with Lin Sun and said, Junior Brother, what can I do for you? Lin Sun transmitted his voice. I don't want to give you advice. I just want to ask you, if I take another 9-star task, can other people notice it at the first time except you? Huang Qingyu's face changed slightly. He realized something and said, Junior Brother, did something happen during the trip to the Sin Realm? Lin Sun nodded and said, On the way back, I met Nan Bohong, the head of the third peak. Huang Qingyu couldn't help saying, Did Nan Bohong? He quickly shut up before he finished his words. Although he was the successor of Yuan Su Pavilion, he didn't dare to speculate about the actions of a peak head. Seeing Huang Qingyu's reaction, Lin Sun could roughly judge that it wasn't Huang Qingyu who leaked the news to Nan Bohong. Senior Brother, you haven't answered my question yet, Lin Sun reminded. Huang Qingyu's gaze swept across the surroundings before he quickly transmitted his voice. Once the 9-star missions of the Origin Void Pavilion are accepted, the great figures of the Elder level will immediately know about it. Junior Brother, although I don't know what you've experienced, I can give you a reminder. Lin Sun was refreshed and transmitted his voice. Senior Brother, please enlighten me. I won't forget your kindness. Huang Qingyu transmitted back. There are 10 elders in the Origin Void Pavilion, but according to what I know, there are only 2 people who have a deep personal relationship with the third peak lord, Lord Nan Bohong. One is Elder Gu Chuan, and the other is Elder Li Bei Xing. Both of them are the same as Lord Nan Bohong, coming from the 4 Eastern Imperial clans. Lin Sun immediately understood. There was no doubt that the one who leaked the news to Nan Bohong must be either Gu Chuan or Li Bei Xing. Or both of them might have leaked it. Huang Qingyu said, Junior Brother, if you are worried about any more twists and turns, you'd better not take any 9-star task recently. Lin Sun smiled and said, Thank you for your concern, Senior Brother, but I'm not easily frightened. After that, he turned around and left. Huang Qingyu was stunned. Thinking of what Lin Sun had done these days since he joined Yuan Church, he immediately felt relieved. This junior brother Lin Sun was simply a person who did not mind stirring up trouble. After returning to his own cave abode of the 9th peak, Lin Sun could not help but be lost in thought. Originally, this was a perfect opportunity to strike Nan Bohong. As long as he revealed what Gu Yujin said, it would definitely cause turmoil in Yuan Church. But Lin Sun was clear that it was not only Nan Bohong involved. Once it was revealed, the situation was bound to be out of control. At that time, it was hard to guarantee that some old bastards would not do something out of line in desperation. More importantly, if they did so, Gu Yujin, who had become a blood devil in the Sin world, would probably be the first to suffer. Once Gu Yujin died, there would be no evidence. Who would believe Lin Sun's words? No wonder Elder Xiao Wenyuan said that someone wanted to use me to muddy the waters of Yuan Church, so as to remove the chronic diseases and tumors in Yuan Church. I am afraid that old bastards like Nan Bohong are the tumors of Yuan Church. Recalling Xiao Wenyuan's warning, Lin Sun vaguely understood something. Someone regarded his arrival as a knife to remove some hidden dangers in Yuan Church. Although he felt that he was being used, Lin Sun did not feel disgusted. Instead, he was willing to be the knife, because it meant that when he caused trouble, those enemies might want to kill him, but there would also be many people who would protect him. Otherwise, without a knife, how could they remove the tumors? Unfortunately, I am just a chess piece at best, a role to charge and break through the enemy lines, Lin Sun sighed softly. Immediately, Lin Sun's eyes became firmer and firmer. After he set foot on the immortal path, who would dare to treat him as a chess piece? Even if he continued to be the knife, he had to give enough benefits. Without thinking further, Lin Sun took out the immortal marrow and began to cultivate. Before breaking through to the immortal realm, he hoped to increase his chances of breaking through the realm by refining the power of the immortal marrow. The news that Lin Sun had completed a 9-star task spread like wildfire, causing some shock in the 9 peak. For the successors of the 9th peak, Lin Sun had already become a godlike existence in their hearts. In just half a month, the situation in Yuan Church was almost led by Lin Sun alone, causing the 9th peak to be frequently noticed. It was no longer as unnoticed as before. There were even some successors of other peaks who came to inquire about Lin Sun. Some pretty senior sisters even implicitly expressed their wish to have a one-on-one exchange with Lin Sun. All of this made Yi Chunjun and the other successors realize that as long as Lin Sun was here, the 9th peak was destined to become more and more lively. Qin Wuyu, the peak master of the 9th peak, saw all of this. He sighed and felt a headache, but of course, he was also gratified. After all, the 9th peak, which used to be deserted and almost forgotten, had not been so lively for a long time. Only Elder Jingqian looked very sullen recently. He would lose his temper at any time, causing the successors of the 9th peak to avoid him. But they were all secretly happy because they knew why Jingqian became so irritable. Because the more dazzling and famous Lin Sun was, the more uncomfortable Elder Jingqian, who had always disliked and rejected Lin Sun, would be. Lin Sun did not care about this. He did not have time to care about this. Right now, he only wanted to complete 2 more 9-star tasks as soon as possible in exchange for a place to become a disciple of Yuankong Pavilion. The next morning, Lin Sun once again appeared in the heavenly treasure hall of Yuanshu Pavilion. Under Huang Qingyu's astonished expression, he received a 9-star task: refine a complete order of heaven rank above the 6th level, and you will receive a 9-star merit. In Lin Sun's opinion, it was not difficult to subdue a complete order of heaven rank with the power of nirvana. But Huang Qingyu was stunned. That was an order of heaven rank above the 6th level. Looking at the entire 7th heaven, how many immortal emperor clans had order of this level? Such an order of heaven rank was definitely something that could only be encountered by chance. What's more, there was no record of such order of heaven rank in the task Jade Slip. P.S. Update sent. Chapter 28:15. The reason why a 9-star mission was a 9-star mission was that it was the most difficult. The descendants of the ancestral court of the Yuan sect were each more monstrous and abnormal than the last, but only a handful of them could complete a 9-star mission on their own. For example, hunting down the Lord of Evil Spirit. Almost none of the descendants who had accepted this mission before Lin Sun had acted alone. Compared to this mission, refining a power of order above the 6th level of heaven rank was undoubtedly more difficult. First, it was because of the danger. Secondly, it was because the energy of order of this level was too rare, and it could only be chanced upon by luck. Every single time one appeared, it would cause a storm of blood. More importantly, there was no record of the existence of such a sample power of order in the mission Jade Slip. This meant that the person who accepted the mission could only search for it on his own. He just came back from the Sin Realm yesterday, and today he has accepted another 9-star mission? Elder Li Beixing couldn't help but be surprised in a blessed place of the Yuanshu Pavilion. He had noticed it the moment Lin Sun accepted the mission. This mission is a bit tricky. Li Beixing realized that it was impossible to lay a trap to deal with Lin Sun in advance like last time, because no one could be sure where Lin Sun would go to find the power of order above the 6th level of heaven rank, unless they tracked him from the moment he left the primordial realm. But in that case their identity would be exposed. After thinking about it, Li Beixing sent the news through a secret letter as soon as possible. The third peak. In an ancient palace, Nan Bo Hong, who was in the middle of a meeting, received a message from Li Beixing. He raised his eyebrows and put away the secret letter calmly. After a moment of silence, he said, "Send someone to keep an eye on the ancient transmission formation in and out of the primordial realm. If you find any trace of Lin Sun, inform me immediately with the rhinoceros talisman." Yes. An elder left in a hurry. After Lin Sun accepted the second 9-star mission, it also caused a heated discussion among the 3 pavilions and 9 peak. There are only 2 possibilities for junior brother Lin to do this. Either he wants to go to the Book Mountain to read the Immortal Inheritance, or he wants to become a descendant of the 3 pavilions. There was no shortage of smart people in the world. Seeing Lin Sun accept the second 9-star mission so quickly, they couldn't help but speculate. In the history of our sect, junior brother Lin should be the descendant who became a core disciple the fastest. Now, does he plan to become a disciple of the 3 pavilions in the same way? Some people gasped. Perhaps junior brother Lin is trying to break through to the immortal realm as soon as possible. With his foundation and cultivation, I'm afraid he already has the potential to break through to the immortal realm. Some of the other core disciples couldn't help but feel great pressure. We have to work hard. The more outstanding junior brother Lin is, the more mediocre and unbearable they will be. Are you willing to live in the shadow of junior brother Lin all your life? Someone shouted angrily. Yes. We can't just admit defeat like this. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the 9 peaks changed. Many of the successors held their breaths and began to work hard on their cultivation. Even the bigwigs of Yuan sect didn't expect that Lin Sun's recent actions had stimulated their fellow disciples and made them work hard. Of course, this was a good thing. But to everyone's surprise, after receiving the second 9-star task, Lin Sun did not go to carry out the task. Instead, he had been cultivating in his blessed enclave. Half a month passed. He didn't move at all. This caused the 3rd peak master, Nan Bo Hong, to be surprised. Could it be that this child had already sensed danger and was planning to lie low for a period of time? Gradually, not many people cared about this matter anymore. And in the 9th peak, Lin Sun had been waiting in meditation. No one knew that on the day he received the second 9-star task, Qin Wuyu, the 9th peak master, came to him and warned him not to go out to carry out the task alone. Lin Sun naturally felt strange. At that time, Qin Wuyu's answer was that even if he had to go out to carry out the task, he needed someone to accompany him. So he decided to send Elder Mo Lanshan to go with Lin Sun. However, he had to wait for a month, because Mo Lanshan was refining a treasure. He could only go out with Lin Sun when he finished his closed-door cultivation. Knowing this, Lin Sun couldn't help feeling warm in his heart. Only then did he know that the Peak Master had been concerned about his every move. The reason why he sent Elder Mo Lanshan to accompany him was obviously that he was worried that he would encounter danger during the task. How could Lin Sun not be moved? A month's time quickly passed. On this day, when Lin Sun was cultivating, Mo Lanshan came to visit. Lin Sun, sorry to keep you waiting. Seeing Lin Sun, Mo Lanshan couldn't help smiling. It's a great honor for me to travel with the elder. What's the harm in waiting for a while? Lin Sun cupped his hands and bowed. Mo Lanshan laughed heartily and said, The Peak Master has already told me that I'm only responsible for your safety during this mission. I won't interfere with your task. In other words, you still need to complete this 9-star task by yourself. Lin Sun also smiled. That's enough. Where are you going to look for the order power? Mo Lanshan asked. Lin Sun took out a jade slip and handed it to Mo Lanshan, saying, This is a jade slip that the Peak Master prepared for me a month ago. It records the locations in the 13 worlds that are highly likely to have a heaven rank order. Please have a look, Elder. Mo Lanshan took it in his hand and looked at it. He couldn't help but be moved and said with emotion, The Peak Master seemed to be against letting you join the 9th peak, but now he obviously doesn't treat you as an outsider. Lin Sun nodded. I won't let the Peak Master down. The information in the jade slip could be said to be extremely precious. Qin Wuyu had spent a great deal of effort to sift through many ancient books and records in the Book Mountain in order to help Lin Sun complete the second 9-star task as soon as possible. This showed how much Qin Wuyu valued Lin Sun. On that day, Lin Sun and Mo Lanshan left the primordial realm through the teleportation ancient formation. As soon as they left, the Peak Master of the 3rd peak, Nan Bo Hong, received the news. However, when he learned that Mo Lanshan was accompanying Lin Sun, Nan Bo Hong's face suddenly darkened. What a Qin Wuyu! Nan Bo Hong's eyes were filled with coldness. He was very clear that without Qin Wuyu's approval and help, with Lin Sun's status, there was no way he could order an old man like Mo Lanshan to accompany him. After a moment of silence, Nan Bo Hong walked out of the hall. If it was just one Lin Sun, with the power he had, it was more than enough to deal with him. But if there was an additional Mo Lanshan, this matter was not something he could solve alone. In the depths of the infinite star sea, in the broken and chaotic universe, the vortexes condensed by more than 3,600 worlds were dotted in different corners of that universe. Each vortex led to a completely different world plane. It was here that Lin Sun found the portal to the Sin realm and hunted the Lord of Evil Spirits. This broken and chaotic universe was called the Realm's Turbulence Belt by the Yuan sect. The more than 3,000 vortex portals scattered in the Realm's Turbulence Belt were all condensed by the old antiques of the Yuan sect a long time ago. And the world plane behind these vortex portals was located in the starry sky between the 7th and 8th heaven. From the 7th heaven, it was also possible to reach the starry sky above 90,000 feet, but it was almost impossible to reach the more than 3,600 world planes, because the starry sky was too vast, and there were countless world planes scattered around. For example, these more than 3,600 world planes were marked one by the old antiques of the Yuan sect after countless years of exploration and exploration. They opened up space and time tunnels to these world planes. How about we start searching from the Feng Yuan world? The figures of Mo Lanshan and Lin Sun appeared near the realm's turbulence belt. Okay. Lin Sun readily agreed. Soon, both of them disappeared from sight. Time passed day by day, and 3 months had passed in a hurry. The footprints of Mo Lanshan and Lin Sun also appeared in one world plane after another. Trekking all the way was not dangerous, but it was quite arduous. Each world plane was extremely vast. Even with the guidance of the Peak Master Qin Wuyu's jade slip, when the two searched for it, things often turned out contrary to their wishes. Those places that were very likely to give birth to order power had either been taken away by others in advance, or there was no order power at all. This made Lin Sun speechless and helpless. Heaven-rank order power was too rare and rare. Even if he searched for it, he was repeatedly disappointed. This made Lin Sun wonder if the 9-star mission this time was a wrong choice. However, the experience along the way had broadened Lin Sun's horizons. Every world plane had different civilizations and cultivation forces, and many of them were strange and dazzling. Lin Sun had never heard of or seen many things. In some planes, there were even many immortal realm experts who were at the top. Of course, Lin Sun and Emo Lanshan were like passers-by. They came and went in a hurry, and did not encounter any twists and turns or dangers. Not to mention Lin Sun, just Emo Lanshan's Nirvana realm cultivation was enough to walk unhindered in those world planes. Along the way, Emo Lanshan also gave Lin Sun many pointers, which benefited Lin Sun a lot. When 3 people walk together, there is always a teacher. Moreover, Emo Lanshan was an old monster at the sempiternal realm who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Traveling with him was like having a teacher by his side. On this day, the figures of Emo Lanshan and Lin Sun appeared in the 9th world plane, marked on the jade slip. This world was called Tsangtu. Following the clues on the jade slip, the two spent a few days and came to the depths of a mountain called Falling Star in the world of Tsangtu. Look, the starlight in the distance is dense, covering the sky like the beginning of chaos. With such a strange phenomenon, it can be seen that there must be order power in that place. Above the mountains, Emo Lanshan's clothes fluttered in the wind. He stretched out his hand and pointed into the distance, a hint of joy appearing on his face. After more than 3 months of trekking, it seemed that there was finally some hope. Lin Sun's spirit was lifted, and he raised his eyes to look in that direction. P.S. Thought card a little later. Chapter 28:16. The mountains were vast, but at the end of the mountains there was starlight all over the sky. It was dense like a dream, covering the sky and the sun, showing a chaotic and primitive scene. Lin Sun's eyes became bright. After searching hard for several months, he finally saw some hope at this moment. According to the records on the jade slips, the meteorite mountain range in Tsangtu world had been explored by countless practitioners since ancient times. But without exception, all of them disappeared mysteriously. As a result, the area where the meteorite mountain range was located had become a forbidden area. But for Lin Sun and Emo Lanshan, they naturally wouldn't be afraid of this. Let's go and have a look. Emo Lanshan led the way. As they approached the place filled with starlight, the world suddenly changed, as if they had suddenly arrived at the primitive period of tens of thousands of years ago. There were many star wreckage on the ground, and no one knew how they fell here. There were also many deep pits, which were caused by extraterrestrial stars falling. Everywhere there were bursts of haze, which was the starlight, but it was colorful, full of pure and incomparably vigorous 5 elements chi, which was frighteningly rich. If one cultivated here, there would be too many benefits. If it weren't for looking for the power of order, Lin Sun would like to stay here for a period of time to absorb the innate 5 elements chi here to refine his Tao body. I see. The power of time and space makes this area seem to have returned to ancient times, showing a primitive chaotic atmosphere. Emo Lanshan saw through some of the mysteries of this area and couldn't help but be surprised. Because of the influence of the power of time and space, this place became extremely vast, larger than a starry sky, and scattered with countless broken star wreckage. Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved, and he also noticed the abnormality of this world. I suspect that this place is very likely to give birth to a new origin of chaos. If so, we can take this opportunity to collect and refine this origin of chaos. Emolanshan's words made Lin Sun's heart move. One of the 9-star tasks in the Hall of Heavenly Treasure of Yuenshu Pavilion was related to collecting the origin of chaos. If so, even if I can't collect the power of order above the 6th grade of heaven rank, if I can collect this origin of chaos, I can also complete a 9-star task. Thinking of this, Lin Sun was excited. Clang, clang, clang. As the two moved forward, an earth-shattering sound of swords suddenly came from the distance. It wasn't long before a large lake appeared before their eyes. The sword chi had soared out from the lake, and it was dazzling, sharp, and awe-inspiring. The lake was actually formed from dense silver starlight, and it surged with magnificent waves. Countless stars could be faintly seen surging and surging within the lake, and they emanated waves of piercingly cold and bone-piercingly cold fluctuations of the energy of order. This scene shocked even a nirvana god like Emolanshan. If I'm not wrong, there's a high level of order energy at the bottom of this lake. Lin was stunned. Does it mean that besides the power of origin of chaos, we can also obtain order power? Emolanshan smiled and said, when you step into the immortal realm, you will understand that when a world's origin of chaos is born, it is usually accompanied by the power of order. We came at the right time, just in time. Otherwise, once the origin of chaos evolves into the embryonic form of a world, its power of origin will become the power of Tao of the world. In that case, it will be worthless. Lin Sun was pleasantly surprised and said, I see. Emolanshan stopped smiling and said seriously, Lin Sun, I won't intervene in this matter. You have to rely on yourself. I can help you, but it means that the 9-star task you have accepted has failed. This seemed very unreasonable. However, this was the rule of the Yuan sect. A 9-star mission had to be completed by a disciple. Rest assured, Elder. As Lin Sun spoke, he looked at the lake full of starlight and sword chi. He didn't delay and directly made a move. A deep and obscure abyss condensed in his palm, and it was suffused with a horrifying aura of devouring. With a bang, it entered the lake and caused monstrous waves to arise. Whoosh! When the lake water that was filled with a piercingly cold and sharp aura splashed onto the side of the lake, it sliced open countless cracks that were like spiderwebs on the nearby ground and space. Lin Sun didn't pay any attention to this. As the great abyss spun and swallowed, it was simply about to overturn this great lake. This was a serious provocation. Boom! The great lake boiled and many order ripples appeared all of a sudden. There was even a mysterious order power that rushed out and turned into a terrifying spiritual body. Order spirit manifesting, condensing into a form. It's indeed the heaven-level order power, and it's above the 6th level. Emolanshan watched this scene from afar and couldn't help but look forward to how Lin Sun would subdue this level of order power. One should know that even immortals would need to use order's secret treasures to suppress it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a match for the heaven-level order power at all. In the Great Lake, the order power surged and condensed into a figure. It was condensed from the thick liquid starlight and quickly cast into a humanoid creature that emitted a blazing brilliance. The aura was so terrifying that it caused the heaven and earth to tremble. Clang! Without saying a word, Lin Sun raised his hand and took out the abyssal sword cauldron. At his current level, he was invincible in the ancestor realm. A casual attack was the most terrifying and fierce method. Moreover, the abyssal sword cauldron had the nirvana order, which was enough to resist the order power here. Crack! The humanoid creature fell and was slashed into pieces. However, soon as the huge lake surged and tumbled, more than a dozen creatures rushed out of it. They were in strange shapes and looked like gods and demons. Each of them emitted a shocking fluctuation of order power, and their aura was extremely terrifying. At the same time, Lin Sun moved and soared into the sky above the Great Lake. He activated his cultivation and controlled the abyssal sword cauldron to set off billions of rays of light to suppress the creatures. The power was too overbearing, accompanied by the fluctuation of the Nirvana order power, completely suppressing the order power on the dozen creatures. Without a doubt, this was a disastrous outcome. Although the dozen or so living creatures were very strong, after the order power on their bodies was suppressed, they were completely insignificant. Bang! Almost in an instant, all of them exploded into pieces. They didn't hold on for long and were completely destroyed. In an instant, the great lake regained its tranquility and only the starlight was surging. In the distance, Mo Lanshan, who witnessed this scene, could not help but be startled. He didn't know that Lin Sun had the Nirvana order, but he could clearly tell that the abyssal sword cauldron that Lin Sun was in possession of was a kind of order secret treasure that could suppress the order power here. Still not coming out? Above the lake, Lin Sun shouted and directly smashed the abyssal sword cauldron into the lake, directly suppressing it. The lake instantly surged and the starlight surged. Countless star remains emerged and boiled. Terrifying order power was released from the deepest part of the Great Lake like a volcanic eruption. Then, whoosh! A rainbow flew across the sky. A Taoist sword overflowing with starlight soared from the lake and leaped into the sky, trying to escape. The abyssal sword cauldron released a terrifying Taoist light and suppressed the void. Even the Nirvana order turned into a refining pattern, floating and sinking at the mouth of the cauldron, taking the initiative to attack. In the past, the Nirvana order had taken the initiative to subdue many order power. This had happened more than once, so Lin Sun wasn't surprised. Clang! The Taoist sword, overflowing with starlight, struggled violently and hit the sword cauldron, trying to escape. However, with the suppression of the Nirvana order, the Taoist sword's struggle was futile. Soon, it was suppressed to the point that it couldn't move and was suppressed into the abyssal sword cauldron. This Taoist sword was the main body of the order power that was born in this place. Mo Lanshan, who was far away, felt dizzy. He was caught off guard. Originally, he expected that Lin Sun would have to pay a price to subdue the order power in this place. He might even encounter some danger. Who would have thought that Lin Sun could easily suppress the order power in just a moment? He did it in a clean and smooth manner. His technique was extremely skillful. It was obvious that this wasn't the first time he did this. The order power that this kid borrowed is probably a rare 9th grade heaven rank, Mo Lanshan thought to himself. As an elder of the 9th peak of the Yuan sect and a Nirvana god, he had naturally seen many rare 9th grade heaven rank orders. Among the 9 peaks of the Yuan sect, almost every descendant had an order secret treasure. Some of the order's secret treasures possessed by them contained the order power of 9th grade heaven rank. However, the reason why Mo Lanshan was shocked was that even if a rare 9th grade heaven rank order power was used to subdue a complete 6th grade heaven rank or above order power, it might not be able to produce such crushing power. The descendant of Feng Siyuan is really unpredictable, Mo Lanshan couldn't help but sigh. At the same time, Lin Sun saw the true appearance of the order power that had been subdued. It was shaped like a Taoist sword, silvery white in color, overflowing with starlight. There were natural order Tao patterns on it, and its aura was shocking. Master, this is a 7th grade heaven rank order. It has a sharp aura and is related to the power of the stars. It's a type of star order. It's quite rare. In the world of Nirvana order, Wu Shuang, who looked like an innocent girl, spoke in a crisp voice. Her voice was full of desire. 7th grade heaven rank. Lin Sun's heart shook fiercely, but he immediately transmitted his voice calmly. I need to exchange it for merit points. If you want to absorb its power, remember not to destroy its grade. Wu Shuang agreed in a crisp voice, revealing a happy and bright smile. Be careful. At this moment, Mo Lanshan, who was far away, appeared out of thin air. He grabbed Lin Sun's arm and moved him to the void on the side of the lake. Almost at the same time, suddenly, a horn sounded in the sky, depressing and depressing. Then, a terrifying aura covered the sky and covered the earth. Lin Sun looked up and saw an ancient ship wrapped in Taoist light. It pressed down and rushed toward the lake on this side. It was a warship. As soon as it arrived, its divine power was boundlessly terrifying, shocking people's hearts. Upon a closer look, the warship was engraved with a huge totem symbol of a sect in bright red divine blood. It was 12 primitive mountains that guarded the chaos and pierced into the sky as if they were eternal. The thick red color of blood formed the background, adding a mysterious aura that made people's hearts palpitate. The divine bone worship of the ancestral court of witchcraft. At this moment, Mo Lanshan's pupils suddenly shrank. P.S. Forget it, I've added 11 times this month, but I won't stop. Goldfish will continue to add more tomorrow. Chapter 28:17. The Voodoo Cult's Ancestral Court. Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat. The god bone worship was huge and wrapped in a layer of Tao light, making it look extremely mysterious. It was like a treasure ship from the divinity realm that had sailed over from chaos. There were a few young men and women on the warship. They all had imposing appearances and sharp eyes. Their bodies were shrouded in Tao light, making them look very intimidating. Regardless of the men or women, they all had a murderous aura. They were powerful and domineering, like overlords who had risen from mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They were clearly ruthless characters who had been baptized by blood and fire. Don't act rashly. Mo Lanshan's expression did not change as he warned Lin Sun. Lin Sun nodded. This was the first time he saw the successors of the Voodoo cult's ancestral court. The Voodoo cult's ancestral court was extremely ancient. They respected strength and worshipped strength. Their successors were all extremely powerful and had shocking combat abilities. Unlike the Yuan sect, the Voodoo cult's ancestral court was even more mysterious. Their sect's legacy was related to strength. They valued strength over heart. They did not abide by etiquette, did not respect the rules, did not respect ghosts and God. They used strength to determine the hierarchy and viewed combat as the key to cultivation. In the eyes of the Yuan sect and the Spirit sect, the Voodoo cult were all barbarians. Opinions were opinions. In the eternal true world, no one could deny the Voodoo cult's strength and terror. Among the 4 ancestral courts, the Voodoo cult was the most famous in terms of combat ability. The god bone worship descended on the shore of the lake. Looks like the power of order here has been snatched away by someone else. A man with a large frame and a determined face dressed in beast skin clothes said coldly. His eyes were already looking at Lin Sun and Mo Lanshan in the distance. At the same time, the other men and women on the warship also looked over. An immortal nirvana realm being and a great ancestor realm being. They seemed to be from some great force. That old man is troublesome. Humph, he snatched what we wanted. No matter who he is, he has to hand it over. These men and women's gazes were unbridled. When they spoke, their attitudes were also extremely domineering. Even though they recognized Mo Lanshan as an immortal nirvana realm being, they did not hold back. Their gazes were cold and they exuded ruthlessness that was branded in their bones. This caused Lin Sun to frown. The successor of the Voodoo cult was indeed like a barbarian, domineering and fearless. However, when one thought about how their orthodoxy didn't respect the heavens and the earth, didn't respect ghosts and gods, and didn't adhere to etiquette, and only believed in and respected strength, it wasn't surprising for them to have such behavior. Mo Lanshan clearly knew the successor of the witchcraft cult's personality, so he did not hold it against him. He looked at the tightly shut cabin and said in a deep voice, "I'm Mo Lanshan, the elder of the 9th peak of the Origin sect. Greetings, my friend from the witchcraft cult. May I know who's the fellow Taoist who brought the disciples out to train this time?" Yuan sect. All of a sudden, the look in the eyes of the men and women of the witch cult changed. They had a look of realization and a hint of eagerness to fight. Their eyes shifted from Mo Lanshan to Lin Sun, scrutinizing him unscrupulously as if he was a prey. Lin Sun was unhappy. Did these guys want to fight with him? Long time no see, fellow Taoist Mo, a hoarse, old voice came from the tightly shut cabin of the divine bone worship. Then the cabin door opened and an old man walked out. He was extremely old, with all his hair gone and wrinkles piled up on his face like a piece of paper crumpled into a ball. But he was hale and hearty, his eyes like golden lamps, and his body was pregnant with amazing vitality, which was very powerful. Moreover, this was the result of him deliberately restraining his qi. Otherwise, once his real power spread out, all the young people would vomit blood and fall to the ground. It was unbearable. Lin Sun's pupils shrank slightly. This old man had an extremely dangerous qi, which was no weaker than that of elder Mo Lanshan. "It's you, Brother Meng." Mo Lanshan's pupils shrank slightly, and then he became calm again. Mo Lanshan's voice sounded in Lin Sun's ears. "This old guy is Meng Shan, an elder of the Thunder Witch branch, one of the 12 branches of the witchcraft cult. Although his status is the same as mine, his combat power is extremely fierce and terrible. But don't panic, I'm here." Lin Sun was shocked. He heard the faint vigilance and fear in Mo Lanshan's voice. But the words, "I'm here," made Lin Sun feel an indescribable sense of security, and his state of mind also became calm. "Haha, since we all know each other, it's easy." Meng Shan, with a wrinkled face and sparse hair, came to the bow of the ship with the help of a walking stick, and said in a hoarse voice, "I came here to let these apprentices gain experience and subdue the power of order. But it seems that the power of order has been taken away by Taoism, fellow Mo?" Mo Lanshan said, "Yes. So what if it's taken away? As long as he's still here, the power of order doesn't belong to your Yuan church." A skinny man with bronze skin and a bare upper body said coldly. He had a ferocious aura and a naked upper body. This was extremely disrespectful and provocative. Meng Shan scolded, "Don't be rude." The skinny man said disapprovingly, "Elder Meng, the etiquette of our witchcraft cult is strength. Everything else is superficial." The other men and women also thought the same and didn't feel strange. Meng Shan laughed and said to Mo Lanshan, "Taoism, fellow Mo, please don't blame us. Our witchcraft cult style has always been like this." There was a hint of pride in his words. Mo Lanshan said indifferently, "Everyone is young. It's not a bad thing to be impulsive and hot-blooded. Don't talk nonsense. I've never liked your Yuan church. Hand over the power of order," the skinny man shouted. Before Mo Lanshan could speak, Lin Sun said coldly, "How dare you demand the power of order by force? Who do you think you are? You can do whatever you want in your witchcraft cult, but this is not the witchcraft cult." These descendants of witchcraft cult were so unscrupulous that they didn't even put Mo Lanshan, an immortal of Nirvana realm, in their eyes. How arrogant they were! To Lin Sun's surprise, his words didn't anger the descendants of witchcraft cult, but made them laugh. "Haha, this boy is not a coward. He dares to talk to us like this. He's much more courageous than ordinary people. But I don't know how strong he is. That's because he doesn't know the consequences of offending us." These words were still arrogant and direct. Anyone who heard them would feel uncomfortable. Lin Sun finally understood why the Yuan Church regarded all the members of witchcraft cult as barbarians. These fellows were completely lawless and fearless. Don't bother with them. These young guys are the same as the old guys in witchcraft cult. They only believe in power and are famous for their arrogance. Mo Lanshan transmitted his voice to Lin Sun. Lin Sun transmitted his voice, "Elder, what happened today is quite strange. In my opinion, even if we tolerate them, they won't let it go. It's better for me to take the initiative to deal with them." As he said, he glanced at the descendants of witchcraft cult and said indifferently, "If you want the power of order, come and fight with me. If I lose, I'll hand over the power of order. If I win, you'd better get out of my sight as soon as possible." His words were casual, but extremely powerful. It was equivalent to a declaration of war. The descendants of witchcraft cult were stunned. When did the descendants of Yuan Church become so unyielding? Immediately, all of them were full of fighting intent. They looked at Lin Sun with playfulness and coldness in their eyes. Since it's a fight, do you dare to fight to the death? The thin man shouted. Mo Lanshan frowned and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. As Lin Sun said before, he also knew that there was no way to resolve the matter today. In this case, it was better to let Lin Sun teach them a good lesson. Meng Shan didn't speak from beginning to end, watching all this with a smile. It's good to fight to the death. But I don't know if someone will intervene, Lin Sun said and glanced at Meng Shan. The thin man's face darkened and said, Elder Meng, please don't intervene in the battle, no matter to the death. Meng Shan narrowed his eyes and said, What do you think, Taoism fellow Mo? Mo Lanshan said calmly, It's best if we don't fight to the death. Of course, if we really fight to the death, I won't stop or intervene. Meng Shan responded with an "oh" and said, Very well. It's been a long time since we, the two heirs of the ancestral court, have sparred. Since we've met here, we can't miss it. How about this? We're not allowed to use the power of order in the battle later. The thin man sneered, I don't care. I'm just worried that without the power of order, this friend of Yuan Church will die a terrible death. The men and women nearby burst into laughter. Lin Sun also laughed and said, Remember what you said? The thin man stopped talking nonsense. In other words, he couldn't hold back his fighting intent and killing intent anymore. He suddenly rushed out of the warship. Remember my name, Yentu, before you die, the thin man said slowly. He carried a murderous spear on his back and a beast bone bow in his hand. He took out a bronze arrow from the quiver. His eyes were like two golden stars, and his pupils turned into a cross, shining like a sword. His face was as sharp as a knife, and he had a firm and wild temperament. He opened his mouth and shouted, Hit! Swoosh! A bronze arrow tore through the sky, making the air explode. With a kind of primitive air and an unstoppable momentum, it suddenly pierced in front of Lin Sun. It was incredibly fast and domineering. Lin Sun clapped his hands, and the bronze arrow suddenly deviated from its trajectory and swept past Lin Sun's figure. Dong! Not far away, a huge holy mountain was shot by the arrow. It burst into pieces on the spot and turned into flying ashes. Hey, this guy is a little interesting. He can actually dodge my arrow. Yentu's surprised voice came from the air. Although he said so, he didn't slow down. He simply drew the bow. The arrow was like a rainbow, piercing through the sky with a sharp edge. Moreover, he used all his strength this time. Each bronze arrow was like a rainbow, making a whining sound and shattering the sky. They were all rare secret divine treasures. Yentu, kill him. Only by suppressing the successor of Yuan Church can we show the power of our witchcraft cult. Shoot him with the divine arrow and blow him into a bloody flower. Several of his companions were shouting and cheering for him. Chapter 28:18. The sharp Taoist light of the arrow pierced through the air, shocking all directions. The aura was terrifying, but Lin Sun didn't dodge. He walked in the air with his clothes fluttering like an immortal. When the first arrow came, he flicked his finger. Clang! In the violent collision, the arrow shook like a dead snake and fell into the void. Then, as Lin Sun moved forward, his sleeves fluttered and his palms and fingers flicked. All the arrows were accurately hit, splashing dazzling light rain in the sky. Lin Sun was unscathed. He went straight forward and approached Yentu in the distance. Seeing this scene, those descendants of the voodoo cult were all surprised. Yentu's archery power was extraordinary and far superior. Who dared to fight against him? But now, he didn't make any progress. This guy's strength is not bad. No wonder he dares to challenge us. Someone was surprised. Yentu, are you going to embarrass our descendants of the voodoo cult? Hurry up and use your real killing move. Someone shouted. Haha, don't worry. It's not boring to fight like this, isn't it? Someone giggled. Several people on the ancient ship didn't care and were talking there. Only the one who drew the bow looked solemn and lacked a smile. The cross in his eyes was even more dazzling. Go! With a loud shout, he loosened the bow and arrow. Suddenly, a bloody light rushed up with red clouds. It was extremely terrifying. This arrow was inscribed with various strange and twisted symbols. It manifested in the void and went straight to Lin Sun. What a sacrifice soul-slaying arrow! Someone laughed. This was a magic arrow refined by an immortal-level character. It was extremely powerful. The caster could infuse a bit of divine sense into it, and it could lock onto the opponent's primordial spirit. It would not stop until it was dead. Obviously, once it hit Lin Sun, it would inevitably burst out with amazing power. Boom! Lin Sun still didn't dodge. He suddenly stretched out his hand and grasped the arrow. In the deafening roar, he caught the terrible arrow abruptly. Then, the arrow was crushed into pieces and exploded. A rain of light scattered. Those descendants of the voodoo cult were all stunned and realized that something was wrong. Because even they didn't dare to take such a blow with bare hands. Dodge! Someone on the warship shouted as he noticed that Lin Sun was approaching the crater at a high speed. Yen Tu wasn't an ordinary person and his reaction speed was extremely fast. He no longer shot to kill, but instead brandished the longbow in his hand and hacked forward. This bow also emitted a strange luster and erupted with killing intent that overflowed into the heavens. Lin Sun threw a simple punch. Clang! The fist energy collided with the longbow, creating a devastating torrent. Yen Tu's body shook violently and his face turned red. Then, his body shook violently and he was sent flying backward by a thunderous strike. Lin Sun's punch was too powerful. It seemed to be indestructible and had a crushing force that made him unable to resist. This person is so strong. The descendants of the witch cult were bewildered, their expressions grave. Among them, Yen Tu's archery skills were outstanding, and his combat ability was peerless. However, in a head-on battle, he was injured. This made them realize that Lin Sun was a formidable opponent. Boom! Lin Sun's tall figure didn't stop and continued to attack. Another strike. Yen Tu screamed as his longbow flew out of his hand. He coughed up blood as his body smashed into a huge mountain. Damn it! The descendants of the witch cult looked gloomy. Meng Shan also frowned, his eyes surging with divine light. Only Mo Lanshan looked calm. With Lin Sun's combat ability, he could defeat peerless figures like Li Zhongyuan and Shen Zidao, let alone a descendant of the witch cult. Whoosh! On the battlefield, Lin Sun's speed was faster and fiercer. Bang! With one foot on Yen Tu's chest, Lin Sun stepped on him and smashed into a huge mountain, collapsing it into ashes. In the process, Yen Tu struggled, his blood boiling, trying to get rid of Lin Sun. It was an insult to be stepped on like this. However, Lin Sun's strength was so terrifying that Yen Tu only felt a sharp pain in his chest. His bones seemed to be broken, and blood spurted out of his mouth. As strong as he was, he also felt the pain like being cut by a knife when he struggled. Open! Yen Tu's long hair stood on end as he struggled fiercely. The cross in his pupils shot out and turned into a sword in the void, clanging and slashing at Lin Sun. This strike was extremely fierce and strange. Although Lin Sun resolved it, his figure was impacted. Boom! Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yen Tu finally broke free. He was like an angry devil, his hair flying in the air, and the cross in his pupils becoming sharper. I want you to die! Yen Tu roared. He took out the spear on his back and slashed it down, splitting the sky at once. A terrible crack appeared, dividing the world into two halves. It was too fierce, and his combat ability was amazing. The earth below was split into two halves. The rolling crimson liquid splashed and rushed to the mountains. The scene was magnificent, like a terrible mountain torrent. As for the sky, it was even more terrible. This kind of attack was breathtaking, and everything was destroyed wherever the murderous intent passed. Boom! Almost at the same time, Lin Sun's body burst out with dazzling light. A shocking scene appeared. Lin Sun caught the spear with his bare hand. His fingers, like pliers made of divine gold, firmly clamped the sharp blade of the spear. Then, with a violent shake, the divine weapon was instantly distorted and deformed. The descendants of the voodoo cult widened their eyes. What kind of power was this? Lin Sun used his bare hands to resist the sharp blade of the divine weapon. It was so strong that they were speechless and trembled. The spear in Yen Tu's hand was a rare imperial weapon with amazing lethality. Ordinary Juetian great ancestors would be split in half in an instant. But now it was clamped by Lin Sun. Yen Tu's face changed. He never thought that Lin Sun was so abnormal that he dared to resist the sharp blade of the divine weapon with his bare hands. Open! He shouted and exerted all his strength. But Lin Sun's eyes were cold. He shook his arms and with a crack, he broke the divine weapon with his bare hands. At the same time, the great abyss roared and exploded from Lin Sun's palm, directly hitting Yen Tuesday. The latter coughed up blood and flew out. He was hit hard. Then, Lin Sun swung his leg and lashed Yen Tu like an iron whip, making him fly up again. He was completely ravaged like a ball. Yen Tu's face was distorted and his body convulsed. He had been seriously injured. At least dozens of bones in his body were broken, and his spirit was unstable. He felt that he could die at any time. An unprecedented sense of frustration welled up in his heart, making his face ashen. Many people on the warship exclaimed, "Stop!" Bang! Lin Sun turned a deaf ear to them and punched fiercely. The power was terrifying to the extreme. In that instant, Yen Tu's body collapsed, his ruined body disappearing inch by inch, turning into a bloody mist. In the end, only a head remained, carrying fear, face pale, lips opening and closing. He was completely terrified, unable to speak a single word. Lin Sun did not immediately kill him. Instead, he held his head in his hand and said, "Don't you think it's ridiculous that you said I would die an ugly death before?" There was silence on the field. The expressions of the descendants of the voodoo cult changed constantly. Lin Sun's strength had a great impact on them. Meng Shan's wrinkled face was gloomy and silent. No one knew what he was thinking at the moment. Emo Lanshan also didn't speak. Since Lin Sun had won, he would not persuade Lin Sun to spare his life. That was not generosity but stupidity. How dare you? On the warship, the descendants of the voodoo cult reacted and shouted angrily. "Release junior brother Yen Tu, or I won't spare you." Their voices were full of threats. Bang! In Lin Sun's hand, Yen Tu's head exploded and disappeared completely. This battle is about life and death. I wanted to give him a chance to live, hoping that you can change your attitude. Who would have thought that you are still as arrogant as before? How disappointing, Lin Sun sighed softly. The bloody scene made Meng Shan's eyelids twitch, and Lin Sun's decisive attitude also shocked Emo Lanshan. This was the first time he saw Lin Sun kill someone. The previous battle in the Yuan cult could only be regarded as an exchange of pointers. There was no winner or loser. But it was different now. A descendant of the voodoo cult was killed by Lin Sun without hesitation. At this moment, the other descendants of the voodoo cult couldn't bear it anymore. They were all provoked to anger. "Kill him!" A woman said word by word with endless killing intent. Then, they directly took action. Each of them took out their treasures and suppressed Lin Sun together. Boom! The sky fell and the earth cracked. The sun and moon lost their light. There were secret treasures everywhere in the void. Brilliant radiance shone brilliantly, their power great. At this moment, Lin Sun also took out the abyssal sword cauldron, which made a roar and set off hundreds of millions of lights. There was a violent roar in the sky. Some treasures were overturned and some secret treasures were smashed. It was deafening. Seeing this scene, 2 descendants of the voodoo cult rushed out of the warship and joined hands to kill Lin Sun. Both of them were outstanding descendants of the voodoo cult. Their combat strength was stronger than Yentu's. The treasures and Taoism they used were also extremely powerful. But since Lin Sun had taken out the abyssal sword cauldron, he would not hold back as before. He directly attacked with the strongest means. Swish! Not long after, a Taoist sword flew out of the cauldron and pierced through one's chest. Scarlet blood flowed out. It was a shocking and somewhat frightening scene. The man turned pale with fright. He staggered back and dodged quickly. But Lin Sun's momentum was unstoppable. He was about to start a killing spree. The other rushed to help, but his treasure was smashed by Lin Sun's sword and his abdomen was cut open. Kill! After being seriously injured, the 2 shouted loudly and fought for the last time. Lin Sun's face was cold. He didn't intend to give them a chance to escape. Qi. A stream of sword qi rushed up. It was so powerful that it could shake the heaven and earth. With a puff, a man in the air was cut in half at the waist. Blood spilled and half of his body fell to the ground. Ah! The man screamed. The head on the upper half of his body was still there. His face was pale. The sharp pain made his face distorted. He had lost his fighting spirit and fighting capacity. Puff! Almost at the same time, the other man not far away was even more miserable. His head was cut off by Lin Sun's sword qi. The sword qi entered his body and made his falling body explode. Neat and tidy. In a moment, both of them were cut off, leaving only their primordial spirits to flee. They could be killed at any time. There were several men and women left on the warship. Seeing this bloody scene, they all felt cold all over as if they had fallen into an ice cave. How could they not know that their opponents this time were far from as simple as they thought? You're courting death. Seeing that Lin Sun was about to kill the 2 men, Meng Shan, who had been watching coldly, couldn't help but let out a cold snort. P.S. There will be an update in the evening. Chapter 28:19. In an instant, Lin Sun's eyes darkened. A big old hand covered the sky, emitting a strong aura that made him breathless and felt a fatal danger. Meng Shan took action. Witnessing the scene of Yentu's death had already made him furious. When he saw that even the other 2 successors were in danger of death, he couldn't help but take action. It's just a fight between juniors. Why get angry? In an indifferent voice, Emo Lanshan's figure appeared at the first time and waved his sleeve. Boom! The world shook violently and the big old hand collapsed in the void. Emo Lanshan took Lin Sun to a place far away. In the distance, Meng Shan, who was originally very old, was covered with immortal light. He seemed to be rejuvenated in an instant, turning into a powerful man with black hair and a strong physique. The murderous aura emitted from his body made the sky dim, and it seemed to be on the verge of collapse. How can I not be angry when you kill my successor? Meng Shan's voice was cold. Emo Lanshan, hand over this boy, and I will let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, you and this boy are doomed to die today. Emo Lanshan frowned. Are you trying to provoke a war between our 2 ancestral courts? That depends on whether you hand over this boy or not. Meng Shan's voice was cold. I didn't expect that your ancestral court can't afford to lose, Lin Sun sneered. Emo Lanshan said, it's not that they can't afford to lose, but they don't put any rules and agreements in their eyes at all. It's impossible to make them bow their heads and leave with a duel. Meng Shan said expressionlessly, don't talk nonsense. I ask you one last time, will you hand over the boy or not? His voice was cold and full of murderous intent. If you don't hand over the boy, you will die. Suddenly, an indifferent voice came from the cabin in the distance. Then, a bloody rainbow rushed out of the cabin, and a handsome figure stood on it. His white clothes fluttered, and his eyes were rolling with the vicissitudes of life. With his appearance, an invisible and terrifying pressure spread, making the world silent. Ju Hu! Emo Lanshan's face suddenly darkened. You are an earth priest of the ancestral court of witchcraft. Don't you think it's shameless to get involved in such a thing? He sensed something was wrong. If he were to bring his disciples out to train, Meng Shan alone would be enough. As for an earth priest like Ju Hu, whose status was equivalent to a vice pavilion master in the Yuan sect, there was no need for him to accompany his disciples out to train. To tell you the truth, I came here specifically for this kid. Ju Hu looked at Lin Sun. His sleeves fluttered in the wind like a young man, but in fact, he was a very old antique. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and realized that something was wrong. He's just a successor of my Yuan sect. How can he be valued so highly by an old monster like you? Emo Lanshan said coldly. He's indeed the successor of your Yuan sect, but he's also the successor of Fangxuan. Don't tell me that your Ink Mountain doesn't know that our witchcraft sect has always viewed Fangxuan as our enemy? Ju Hu said indifferently. His voice was casual, but his words revealed Lin Sun's identity. Emo Lanshan looked at Go Hu, then at Meng Shan on the other side, and said with a gloomy face, I'm curious who told you all this. This was very strange. This was the forbidden area of the falling stars in the Tsangtu world. Few people knew about it except the ancestral court of Yuan sect. But now, people from the ancestral court of witchcraft sect suddenly came here and said that they came for Lin Sun. Emo Lanshan realized that it was very likely that someone from Yuan sect had leaked his and Lin Sun's whereabouts. This was the reason why Emo Lanshan was so angry. As long as you hand over this kid, I'll tell you. Go Hu's eyes were full of vicissitudes. From the moment he appeared, he had a well-planned and confident attitude. It's fine if you don't hand him over, but I'm afraid you'll die here with this kid. Meng Shan said coldly on the other side. Such a scene enraged Lin Sun. How could he not know that he and Elder Emo Lanshan had been betrayed by the enemy of Yuan sect? Lin Sun knew that this matter was bound to have something to do with Nan Bohong, the head of the third peak. But at this moment, Emo Lanshan smiled and said, Lin Sun, do you know what the peak head said when we went out to travel this time? Without waiting for Lin Sun's answer, Emo Lanshan said to himself, This time, you and I are like a bait. It depends on whether we can catch a big fish or not. But I didn't expect that it would be two big fish from the ancestral court of witchcraft sect this time. This shows how crazy some people in our sect are. Lin Sun was stunned. He suddenly realized that Qin Wuyu and Elder Emo Lanshan seemed to be prepared. Fishing. Go Hu raised his eyebrows. He seemed to feel something was wrong and took action at once. He stood still, but the world suddenly turned upside down. Countless stars dimmed and swayed as if they had fallen into a terrible doomsday disaster. Then, the earth cracked and thousands of blood-colored spears rushed out, rushing towards Emo Lanshan with overwhelming momentum. Lin Sun couldn't open his eyes due to the terrible aura of immortality. He felt great fear and danger, as if he was on the verge of death. Because this power was too supreme, far beyond the longevity realm. It belonged to the power of the Nirvana realm, which could turn the world upside down with a single thought. Slash! At the same time, Meng Shan shouted, his voice resounding through the sky like a thunderclap. Clang! A black bone saber, entwined with terrifying skull-shaped immortal laws, swept out. Black smoke rose, pierced through the sky, and slashed towards Lin Sun. The domineering saber chi seemed as if it was going to destroy this world. This level of power was far beyond Lin Sun's ability to resist. He had no doubt that if Emo Lanshan didn't stand in front of him, the terrifying aura alone was enough to kill him in an instant. It was too terrifying. Facing such a pincer attack, Emo Lanshan took a deep breath, and a strange snow-white jade talisman appeared in front of him. Old Weirdo Yen, it's your turn, he said softly. Countless blood-red spears whistled through the air, but at this moment they all froze in the air, strangely motionless and unable to move. Then, a figure as imposing as a god rushed out of the snow-white jade talisman. He was simply like a dazzling sun that emitted boundless radiance, dazzling and resplendent. Eternal energy that was vast like an ocean transformed into a myriad of dazzling swords that coiled around his body, and they resounded like a surging tide. Merely this imposing aura was able to oppress this expanse of the heavens and the earth to the point of rumbling and collapsing while everything was destroyed. Bang! Bang! The countless blood-red spears that were floating nearby were condensed from Ju-Hu's eternal laws. However, at this moment, they were like weeds that had been struck by lightning, and they exploded in the sky, causing a rain of blood-red light to cover the sky. In the distance, Ju-Hu exclaimed, "Yen Ji, didn't you only have a wisp of spirit left?" Almost at the same time, the imposing figure stretched out his hand and grabbed. The black bone blade that was slashing towards him was caught in the palm of his hand, and he lightly swiped it. It turned into ashes with a rustling sound. Puff! Under the backlash, Meng Shan coughed up blood and his face turned pale. He said angrily, "Priest Ju-Hu, this old guy is suspected to have stepped into the transcendent realm. He himself was also in the Nirvana realm. Although he was not as good as Ju-Hu, the gap was not big. But now, he was injured in just one blow." Lin Sun couldn't see all this clearly, but he could see that the cooperation between Ju-Hu and Meng Shan was destroyed easily. This shocked him, and the image of the big white cat appeared in his mind. Was it the Pavilion Lord of Yuan Kong who only had a wisp of spirit left? Boom! Before Lin Sun could react, the imposing and dazzling figure stepped forward and suddenly punched. The world collapsed like a broken canvas. The terrifying power gathered in the punch, as if to break the world. Confrontation! Ju-Hu, who looked like a young man in white clothes, shouted. An ancient sorcerer appeared, full of terrifying and violent aura, as if coming out of the wilderness. However, in the face of the imposing figure's punch, the sorcerer looked very weak. It was smashed and turned into turbulence that swept in all directions. Ju-Hu trembled all over and couldn't help coughing up a mouthful of blood. That punch was too overbearing. "Let's go." Seeing that the imposing figure punched again, Ju-Hu rushed into the divine bone worship with Meng Shan at once. With a roar, they tore through the sky and left. But the imposing figure didn't stop. Instead, he took a deep breath and made a strange palm print in front of him, like a dazzling pagoda. The palm print broke through the sky. In the depths of the boundless void, the divine bone worship was fleeing at full speed. But a dazzling pagoda suddenly descended and pressed down fiercely. Boom! The whole worship was covered with scarlet Tao pattern of order, but it was smashed by the pagoda in an instant. Open! Seeing that the worship was about to be destroyed, Ju-Hu rose into the air with a roar and tried his best to bombard the pagoda. But he had underestimated the terror of this blow. In an instant, as the pagoda pressed down, Ju-Hu's immortal Taoist body, which was comparable to divine gold, was smashed and cracked. Blood poured out like a long river. However, the power of the pagoda palm print also collapsed, otherwise Ju-Hu, the earth priest of the witch cult, would have been killed on the spot. Whoosh! Soon, the divine bone worship disappeared. Lin Sun naturally couldn't see all this, but Emo Lanshan saw it all. He couldn't help but sigh with some regret. The world was tumbling, and the aftermath did not dissipate. As the mighty figure stood in the sky, he was simply like a god that split the heavens and the earth apart, and he was unbelievably formidable. But Lin soon noticed that the aura of the imposing figure was fading rapidly. Obviously, this was not the real body of Old Weirdo Yin. It was very likely to be just a Dharma form. "Thank you, Old Weirdo Yin," said Emo Lanshan. "Don't mention this after returning to the sect," said the imposing figure. Emo Lanshan was surprised. "Why?" "There's no proof, and it will expose the fact that I repelled the enemy. It's not wise to cause those bastards to react because of this." As the imposing figure spoke, he turned into a puff of white smoke and disappeared. It was as if he had never existed at all. Mo Lanshan stood there, his expression uncertain. After a long while, he sighed. Although foreign enemies are hateful, we can fight against them. Only the traitor inside is the most hateful. P.S. Send more updates to me. Chapter 28:20. Traitor. Lin Sun's heart was filled with uncontrollable killing intent. If Gu Yujian hadn't reminded him when he received the first 9-star mission, he probably wouldn't have known that Nan Bohong had been secretly making arrangements. And this time, when he carried out the second 9-star mission, he was intercepted by the Ancestor Court of Witchcraft. How could Lin Sun not be angry when he was schemed and framed by the enemy in such a way? He had no doubt that if Elder Mo Lanshan hadn't accompanied him this time, he would have been killed by his own strength. Elder Mo, it has only been a few months since I joined the sect. Why are those enemies so impatient? Lin Sun said calmly. Mo Lanshan said after a moment of silence, if you set foot on the immortal path, it will be more difficult to deal with them. Lin Sun was shocked. Block my path? Fortunately, I invited old eccentric Yan's Dharma idol for this trip, so those enemies didn't succeed. Mo Lanshan let out a long breath. Elder, is old strange Yan the head of Yuankong Pavilion? Lin Sun asked. That's right. A long time ago, he cultivated himself to the point where only a wisp of spirit was left. However, he was in existence in the transcendent realm perfection after all. His cultivation had reached an incredible level. Most people in the sect only knew that old monster Yen only had a wisp of spirit left. However, they didn't know that his immortal Tao body and Dharma form didn't dissipate after his cultivation had problems. Instead, they were preserved by a supreme magical power. Even in the mysterious Sky Pavilion, only Vice Pavilion Master Xian Fei Ling knows about this. Mo Lanshan whispered, when we return to the sect this time, don't mention this. Lin Sun nodded. He didn't ask about the relationship between Mo Lanshan and Yanji, but Mo Lanshan called Yanji Old Strange Yen. Otherwise, it would be impossible to invite Yanji's Dharma form. Mo Lanshan said, don't delay any more. Go and collect the origin of chaos here, and we will return to the sect immediately. Okay. Lin Sun started to act. Before, he only subdued the power of order born in the Big Lake, and now he was going to collect the origin of chaos in the Big Lake. Primordial Realm. After nearly 4 months, Lin Sun, who was out on a 9-star mission, appeared in the treasure hall of Yuan Su Pavilion, which immediately caused a sensation. Junior brother Lin is back. He actually managed to subdue an order power above the 6th grade of heaven rank. It should be true. Didn't you see senior brother Huang Qingyu's expression? He was completely dumbfounded. People in the hall were talking about it and looking at Lin Sun with complicated expressions. While Lin Sun was out on a mission, there were many voices in the Yuan sect saying that Lin Sun would probably return empty-handed this time. But who would have thought that when Lin Sun came back this time, it seemed that he really brought back a power of order above the 6th grade of heaven rank. At this moment, Huang Qingyu's heart was also unable to calm down. If Lin Sun had just completed this 9-star task, it would not have surprised him too much. The key point was that Lin Sun had also brought back a strand of origin of chaos, which meant that he had completed another 9-star mission at the same time. Completing 2 9-star missions at once was unprecedented in the history of the Origin Sect's ancestral court. Junior brother, you've really opened my eyes. After helping Lin Sun exchange 2 9-star merits in a row, Huang Qingyu couldn't help but sigh. In less than half a year, Lin Sun had been promoted from a newcomer to a core disciple of the 9th peak, and he had completed 3 9-star missions in succession. Such a feat could be called a miracle. Huang Qingyu could imagine that today, the whole sect would probably be in a sensation because of Lin Sun again. It was just as Huang Qingyu had expected. After learning that Lin Sun had completed 2 9-star missions in one fell swoop, the 3 pavilions and the 9 peaks of Yuan sect were all surprised, causing all kinds of discussions and uproars. If he does this, where will we put our faces? Some successors of the sects smiled bitterly. They had been in the Yuan sect longer than Lin Sun, ranging from hundreds of years to thousands of years. But so far, they were either inherited disciples or core disciples. Lin Sun had just entered the Yuan sect for less than half a year, but he had done so many sensational things. Now he had completed 3 9-star missions and was qualified to enter the 3 pavilions for cultivation. This was tantamount to leaving the old people behind. Dong Wang Shaoan, Qi Qingshi, Mu Zunwu and others who entered the sect together with Lin Sun all felt a deep sense of powerlessness and bitterness. In less than half a year, the gap between them and Lin Sun was getting wider and wider. The sensation caused by this matter even made those big shots unable to calm down. How could he still be alive? In the 3rd peak, Nan Bo Hong, the peak master, looked extremely ugly. In addition to anger, there was a trace of unspeakable panic in his heart. Only he and some big shots knew what it meant for Lin Sun to come back alive this time. With Mo Lanshan's cultivation, how could he protect this boy? There must be someone else intervening in the dark. Nan Bo Hong was sure that the matter against Lin Sun had been exposed this time, but he was not sure how much Lin Sun and Mo Lanshan knew. Similarly, he didn't know who helped Lin Sun and Mo Lanshan this time. That was why he felt a trace of panic. To Nan Bo Hong's surprise, Lin Sun didn't make any noise this time, nor did he mention what he had encountered during this trip. With this boy's temperament, I'm afraid he has already turned the world upside down, but he acted as if nothing had happened. I'm afraid this is the instruction of Mo Lanshan. After Nan Bo Hong calmed down, he made an inference. If so, it can be seen that Mo Lanshan and the force behind him dare not to shed all pretenses at this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid they can't bear the noise. Thinking of this, Nan Bo Hong calmed down a lot. But when he thought that Lin Sun was still alive, Nan Bo Hong felt depressed and irritated. I'd like to see how long the person who secretly helps you can protect you. After a long time, Nan Bo Hong gritted his teeth and said, "The 9th peak." After Lin Sun left the Yuan Su pavilion, he went straight to see Qin Wuyu, the peak master. "Thank you, peak master." Lin Sun bowed seriously. Although Qin Wuyu didn't take part in this mission, under his instruction, he helped Lin Sun resolve a killing disaster. How could Lin Sun not be grateful? Qin Wuyu had always been serious, and this time was no exception. He said calmly, "Elder Mo has already told me what happened. I only hope that you don't have any prejudice against the Yuan Church. Those scum will never be able to represent the entire Yuan Church." Obviously, he was targeting those traitors who colluded with Yuan sect's ancestral court. Lin Sun said, "Of course I know. What's your next plan?" Qin Wuyu asked. "I want to go to Yuan Kong Pavilion to cultivate." Lin Sun didn't hide and told his purpose. Qin Wuyu was stunned for a moment and then said, "Well, Yuan Kong Pavilion is in charge of the criminal law. It's the place with the strictest rules in the sect. As long as you act according to the rules, no one will dare to make things difficult for you there." After chatting for a while, Lin Sun left. "Peak Master seems a little reluctant?" Mo Lanshan asked with a smile. At this time, only he and Qin Wuyu were left in the hall. "I just didn't expect that he would enter Yuan Kong Pavilion to cultivate in less than half a year after entering the sect. This speed of promotion is absolutely unparalleled." Qin Wuyu's voice was slightly complicated. Mo Lanshan couldn't help sighing with emotion. He could vaguely understand Qin Wuyu's feelings. In the beginning, because Lin Sun had a lot of troubles, Qin Wuyu was actually quite resistant to him joining the 9th peak to cultivate and didn't want to see him. But with some things that happened in the past 6 months, Qin Wuyu's view of Lin Sun had changed a lot. If Mo Lanshan remembered correctly, Qin Wuyu really started to regard Lin Sun as the successor of the ninth peak when Lin Sun participated in the assessment of Yuanqing Pavilion. Now, Lin Sun was going to leave the ninth peak in less than half a year. For Qin Wuyu, it was destined that he couldn't bear to leave. Lin Sun is indeed unparalleled and his future achievements are bound to be limitless. But Peak Master, you don't have to be upset about this. After all, Lin Sun came from our ninth peak. No matter how high his achievements are in the future, he used to be a member of our ninth peak. Mo Lanshan said with a smile. Qin Wuyu's expression changed slightly and he said with a rare smile, "This boy is really lovable and hateful." On the same day, Yi Chunjun, Qin Ruoling and others in the ninth peak also learned that Lin Sun was going to leave for Yuankong Pavilion to cultivate. They were all caught off guard. It was too fast. In the past 6 months, Lin Sun was going to go to Yuankong Pavilion as the core successor of the ninth peak. How could Yi Chunjun and others have expected this? When they realized it, they all came to Lin Sun to bid farewell. Lin Sun happily held a banquet and drank with a group of brothers. In the end, even Mo Lanshan and Qin Wuyu came, which made Lin Sun feel flattered. The next morning, Lin Sun left the ninth peak and appeared in Yuankong Pavilion. Deacon Tao Ling received him in person. Seeing Lin Sun for the first time, this big shot, who had always been cold and ruthless, squeezed out a smile for the first time and said, "If I guess right, Lin Sun, you are going to enter Yuankong Pavilion to cultivate?" Lin Sun handed over the sect token and then saluted. "Yes." Tao Ling was not surprised because he had heard yesterday that Lin Sun had completed 3 9-star tasks. As long as he was not stupid, he could guess what Lin Sun was going to do next. Yuankong Pavilion is different from the ninth peak. To cultivate here, you have to take on some duties. If you really want to enter Yuankong Pavilion to cultivate, you have to start as a disciple. Tao Ling said, "Do you understand?" Lin Sun nodded. "Let's go. I'll show you around Yuankong Pavilion first," Tao Ling said. On this day, the news that Lin Sun had become a disciple of Yuankong Pavilion spread throughout Yuan School, attracting countless attention and setting off a great uproar. Half a year ago, Lin Sun was still a newcomer. Now, he had become a disciple of Yuankong Pavilion. The speed of his advancement was so fast that no one could match him since ancient times. P.S. The second chapter is a little later and will continue to be updated tonight. Chapter 28-21. Yuankong Pavilion. The Peak Master Yanji. The 3 deputy Peak Masters were Xian Feiling, Fu Wenli and Qi Shaoyun. Among them, Fu Wenli and Qi Shaoyun came from the 8th Heavens giant Fu clan and Qi clan respectively. Under the 3 deputy pavilion masters, there were 9 elders. Further down, there were 12 deacons, 24 deputy deacons, and 36 disciples. Tao Ling was one of the 16 deacons. The territory of Yuankong Pavilion was located in Yuankong Mountain, one of the 3 main peaks of the Yuan realm. It covered an extremely vast area and was known as a blessed land with 306 caves. At present, Yanji, the pavilion master, only had a wisp of spirit left. After many years of retreat, the affairs of Yuankong Pavilion were managed by the 3 deputy pavilion masters. "This is your blessed land, what do you think?" Tao Ling took Lin Sun to the mountainside of Yuankong Mountain. Here, there were towering ancient trees, waterfalls, and flowing springs. Compared with the 9th peak, the blessed land here was undoubtedly better. Lin Sun could feel that there was a trace of a mortal aura in the void, which made people feel relaxed and happy. "Good place." Lin Sun nodded. Tao Ling handed a new sect token to Lin Sun. "This is your token. In the future, your monthly salary will be personally delivered to your door." Lin Sun was surprised. This might be the treatment that only the disciples of the 3 pavilions could enjoy. In the 9 peaks, even the core disciples could only go to the Yuankong Pavilion to receive their monthly salary every month. You are a newcomer, familiarize yourself with the Yuankong Pavilion for a period of time, and I will arrange a post for you later." Taoling was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something and said, "Our Yuankong Pavilion is in charge of the criminal law, and we are most concerned about the rules. But you should also remember that you can do as long as there is no prohibition." After that, he turned and left. "I can do as long as there is no prohibition." Lin Sun thought about it carefully and vaguely understood. He walked into his own blessed heavenly abode. Inside the blessed land, it was another scene. There were incense burners, tables, futons, bookshelves, and other things. In addition, there were special alchemy halls, refining halls, and medicine gardens. There was even a divine spring that was specially prepared for cultivation, and it gurgled out a pool of spirit liquid that contained an extremely primitive and ancient aura of chaos and strands of the energy of the immortal divine marrow. Lin Sun couldn't help being moved. The treatment of the disciples of the three pavilions was indeed extraordinary. Sitting cross-legged on the futon beside the spiritual spring, Lin Sun took out the jade slip given by Taoling. The jade scroll recorded everything related to the Sky Origin Pavilion. This disciple's monthly stipend is 6,000 kilograms of immortal spirit marrow, 150 kilograms of immortal spirit materials, and 3 times a month, I can enter the book mountain to borrow books. As he read, Lin Sun increasingly felt the benefits of becoming a disciple of the Pavilion of Primary Void, which were far beyond that of the core successors of the Nine Peaks. Until he finished reading the jade slips, Lin could not help but be lost in thought. The most important thing now was to break through to the next realm. Otherwise, with Emperor Juexian's cultivation, he wouldn't be qualified to become a deputy deacon. Because according to the rules, in order to become a deputy deacon, one must have the cultivation of the heavenly longevity realm. Only then would one be able to pass the specialized test to become a deputy deacon. In other words, the heavenly longevity realm was a threshold that determined whether or not one had the qualifications to be promoted to deputy deacon. My great Tao has already reached an unprecedented level of perfection. There's no need to force it. The opportunity to break through will walk right into the trap. Unfortunately, ever since I entered the Yuan sect, I've been busy with all sorts of trivial matters. I haven't been able to meditate and cultivate in peace, so I've missed many opportunities. Lin Sun decided that in the following period of time, he would focus on cultivation and make preparations for breaking through to the immortal realm. But things didn't go as he wished. On the night he became the successor of the Pavilion of Primary Void, someone came to visit. Feng Qishi. She wore a black warrior's outfit, and her long black hair was tied into a ponytail, revealing her snow-white neck. Her pretty face was clear and beautiful, and her beautiful eyes were as bright as stars. She stood there casually, and a pair of slender and straight legs were exceptionally eye-catching. She exuded a valiant and elegant charm. When he saw her come to visit, Lin Sun could not help but be surprised. He did not understand why she had come. "Junior brother, I heard you became the successor of the Pavilion of Primary Void, so I came to see you." Feng Qishi was straightforward as she expressed her purpose. "Also, you're a newcomer of the Pavilion of Primary Void. Don't you plan to arrange a banquet and treat us, your senior brothers and sisters, to a drink?" Taoling's welcoming of Lin Sun into the Pavilion of Primary Void caused an uproar in the Pavilion of Primary Void. Successors of the Pavilion of Primary Void like Feng Qishi all knew about it immediately. Lin Sun smiled. "Since senior sister has spoken, I'm naturally more than happy to." "I knew you wouldn't refuse." Feng Qishi smiled. "That's why I've already used your name to invite the senior brothers and sisters of the Pavilion of Primary Void to attend the banquet in 2 hours. Junior brother, you won't blame me for acting first and reporting later, right?" Lin Sun smiled. "Senior sister, I'm more than grateful for your consideration. How could I blame you?" No matter where it was, a newcomer was bound to need a process to blend in. It was the same in the Pavilion of Primary Void. Feng Qixi clearly wanted Lin Sun, the newcomer, to integrate into the Sky Pavilion as soon as possible. Lin Sun could naturally see this. Junior brother, you must also be wondering why I'm doing this. Feng Qixi was very straightforward, clear, and carefree. She noticed the doubt in Lin Sun's heart and said directly, I just want you to see exactly how many people have come to attend the banquet tonight. In this way you'll be able to roughly determine some things. For example, how many people don't like you. She paused for a moment and continued. As for me, I naturally want to form an alliance with you. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment, and then he made an inviting gesture. Senior sister, please come in for a chat. Feng Qixi revealed a trace of a smile. If Lin Sun still didn't respond to her goodwill, then it would be disappointing. After the two of them took their seats in the abode, Lin Sun personally poured a cup of tea for Feng Qixi, and then he asked, Senior sister, I won't hide anything. I want to ask you, what do you mean by forming an alliance? Feng Qixi held the teacup with her fair and slender hands while a trace of helplessness appeared on her face. She said, Since I took the initiative to admit defeat to you in the Heavenflow Dojo of Yuanqing Pavilion, some things have changed. Especially after I entered the Sky Origin Pavilion, I've been disliked everywhere, and some great figures even spoke ill of me, causing my situation in the Sky Origin Pavilion to be rather embarrassing. When she spoke up to hear, Feng Qixi drained the tea in her cup in one gulp, and then she said with a bright smile, Of course, all of this doesn't matter, and it doesn't affect my cultivation. However, one must always be on guard against others. I'm worried that I'll encounter difficulties and setbacks in the future, so I want to form an alliance with you. Only now did Lin Sun vaguely understand. In the end, the cold shoulder and resistance Feng Qixi suffered was inextricably related to him. Lin Sun asked with a smile, Senior sister, aren't you afraid that I'll implicate you again? You've already been implicated once, so it doesn't matter if you do it again. Feng Qixi said with a smile, not to mention that I'm very optimistic about your future. Lin Sun didn't say any more nonsense and said, Since you've made up your mind, I naturally won't refuse. In the future, so long as you're in trouble in the Sky Origin Pavilion, I won't stand idly by. Feng Qixi restrained her smile and said seriously, Me too. 2 hours later. On the cliff platform outside the Blessed Enclave, Lin Sun set up a number of tables, on which there were all kinds of rare fruits and delicacies. It was a dazzling lineup. This was the first day he joined the Sky Origin Pavilion. Since he was going to invite a group of senior brothers and sisters to a banquet, he naturally couldn't be shabby. Even the wine was the best wine he had collected for many years. However, as time went by, no one came. Lin Sun, who had been waiting, looked calm, but he frowned slightly. Now, including him, there were a total of 37 disciples in the Sky Origin Pavilion, and all the invitations sent by Feng Qixi were sent in the name of Lin Sun. But now, an hour had passed since the agreed time, yet no one came to the banquet. This caused Lin Sun to faintly feel that something was wrong. Looks like your arrival is even more unwelcome than mine, said Feng Qixi as she gazed at the deserted banquet. Do you feel very annoyed? Lose face? Lin Sun smiled and said lightly, I can't say that I'm annoyed. Face is something one strives for, and it can't be given by others. However, senior sister is right. This banquet has indeed allowed me to see how many people don't like me. Feng Qixi thought for a moment and said, So many people didn't come, but not all of them are hostile to you. There are probably some senior brothers and sisters amongst them who don't want to bring trouble upon themselves, so they don't want to have anything to do with you. After all, if they come to participate in the banquet and are found out by those who hate you, then it will definitely cause some trouble, and it will undoubtedly be detrimental to their situation. In the affairs of the world, we should seek benefits and avoid harm. Since ancient times, this has never been the case. Lin Sun poured a cup of wine for himself and drank it in one gulp before he said indifferently, It's fine if they don't want to bring trouble upon themselves. However, if they choose to join forces with my enemies, then they're naturally my enemies as well. Feng Qixi smiled while her beautiful eyes rippled. Junior brother, do you know why I've allied with you? It's because even if you're in the Yuan sect that's filled with geniuses, you have something that stands out from the masses. Lin Sun chuckled and said, Senior sister, you flatter me. Feng Qixi asked, Do we continue waiting? There's no need to wait. Besides me, no one will come this time. Suddenly, a cold voice resounded from afar, and then a thin figure walked over. His skin was bronze, his face was firm as if it was carved by a blade, and he was like a volcano that would erupt at any moment. His entire body was filled with an extremely violent and ferocious aura. Shockingly, it was the descendant of the third peak, Drifting Cloud Feng. Lin Sun instantly revealed a surprised expression. Why has this fellow come? Junior brother Lin Sun, I forgot to tell you that Drifting Cloud Feng entered the Sky Pavilion at the same time as me. Moreover, his situation is similar to mine, and he's been neglected. Feng Qixi explained with a smile, and she seemed to not be surprised by Drifting Cloud Feng's arrival at all. Only now did Lin Sun come to an understanding, and he immediately stood up to greet Drifting Cloud Feng. Senior brother Lu, please come in. Drifting Cloud Feng had a cold and fierce disposition, but his expression eased up greatly when facing Lin Sun, and he nodded and said, Junior brother, there's no need to be so courteous. Feng Qixi teased with a smile. The three of us are in similar situations, and we're in the same boat, so there's really no need to be courteous.